Any motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're waiting for our fifth member because it requires a supermajority for the accessory dwelling special permit. So we're waiting for Bob. Counting or minutes?
Yeah, or,
Or we can wait a minute.
yeah, we can wait a minute.
You saved us, Bob. We're about to go into accounting.
Saved everybody in the audience. Sorry.
Not to worry. We knew you were coming. Okay, being 7:35, we'll have the first item on the agenda is the continued public hearing, accessory dwelling special permit, 113 Arbor Drive. Applicant Russell Williams.
Again, Michael Hayes, I represent Russ Williams, who is here, the applicant. Since our last meeting, two things I want to report to you. One is I left with Karen the revised Title V inspection report was filed with the Board of Health today, and all the work that we had talked about previously is complete, and it is a full pass on the Title V report. The conditional pass has been amended to pass. So I think we're suggesting good shape on that. Secondly, we have, after our discussions last time, revised the plans which are in front of you. In effect, what we have done is to change the accessory dwelling proposed from a two-bedroom to a one-bedroom. One of the bedrooms in the lower level, the one straight ahead, will not be living area, it will be the storage area, which brings the accessory dwelling to a one-bedroom, 747.2 square foot accessory dwelling. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Laura, any comment?
Sure. I was able to go out and look at the house this week from both the outside and the inside. On the outside, as far as the parking, there is a parking space that's over to the right of the garage that's kind of separate. You know, you might be a little bit on the grass getting into it, but it's basically one parking space that I think you could enter and exit without disturbing other cars, even if there were, you know, two other cars parked in front of the garage. You'd have a pretty good shot at getting into that. Certainly if there's one car on the left in front of the garage, you could kind of scooch in and out there without any problem, and someone coming out of the garage could get by you. So that seemed to address the parking questions that you had had. The other things that I looked at out there were what the potential was for that second bedroom that is being kind of decommissioned, whether there was any potential for maybe creating an outside entrance or something like that to make it, like, you know, more defined as storage. But it's under a deck, so that's not really going to work. That also makes it, I think, less attractive as a bedroom because, you know, one of the windows is just looking under the deck. The other bedroom for the second means of egress has a big window. I think it's about 4 foot square that has kind of a slider that opens, and you're right at ground level, so it would be pretty easy to get out of that. There were a couple of other things the board had talked about. You talked about maybe having a pocket door where you go into the kitchen, but there are some electric, you know, light switches right there on your left, so it didn't look like there was much potential to do that. You know, it seems like maybe the best thing to do is to just leave it the way it is. You could possibly, you know, make another doorway further down, closer to where the entrance to the bathroom is, but I don't know how much you'd really gain by doing that. And now that the area is under the 750 square feet, I think you don't really need to do that so much. So it looks like, as long as the board is comfortable with the second bedroom as being considered storage, it looks like this would fit into the standards. As far as that storage, what you've done before is to get a deed restriction for it, and that says that it's never going to be able to be used as a bedroom. You could furthermore, say that it has to be locked while the, maybe put in some kind of a lock that the primary dwelling or the owner of the property would have, and not the person who's renting the unit. And then we also were thinking of adding a condition that when the property is sold, that the new owner has to come right in and sign the affidavit that they're going to live there in order to keep the special permit active. And that would be required on any future sale. But, I have to say, when you look at it from the outside, it pretty much blends. It looks like a single-family house. It doesn't really look two-family. It looks less two-family than some of the other ones that I think have come through. But, that's all a matter of opinion, so.
Laura, I think you'd mentioned that we might, there's a closet in that storage room, that might have to be removed. Is that correct?
Well, that would be one way to, further decommission it as a bedroom. So, that's what we were proposing.
So the applicant, I'm just curious, what were you proposing for that? Were you proposing to have it be locked? Or just so that the fact that someone couldn't use it as part of the accessory dwelling? Or what were the conditions that you were thinking about?
If the board requested to have a lock on it, we'll certainly have a lock on it. Our feeling was that the special permit would require that be used as storage, and that this is only a one-bedroom accessory dwelling. We happily comply with that, obviously, but if the board feels more comfortable with that being one,
Okay. And I think at the last meeting, we talked about that it was in the process of being sold. Is that still in the same, that there was an applicant that was interested in the property? Is that still the same?
There was no longer a person interested in the property.
Okay. Because I know at the time,
For sale, does it?
well, I know it's for sale, but we talked about whether the approval or non-approval of the accessory dwelling, would that matter to
It had nothing to do with the sale.
Okay.
I said that before.
Okay.
Did not get to a purchase and sale agreement. Had an offer, but a purchase and sale agreement couldn't be put together satisfactory for both parties.
Okay.
It's still on the market.
So I guess one of the things we talked about last time was, does the approval of an accessory dwelling, in your opinion, make it more or less marketable, or?
I guess in my opinion, which I think it depends on who's looking.
Yeah.
But Ed's the broker on the deal, so he might be able to tell you better than that.
That's great.
Edward Tibbetts, Meeting House Lane. I'm a licensed real estate agent and work as Hollow Banker in conjunction with my wife, who is the listing agent on the property. I've also known Russ for 30 years and have consulted with him on this project. The challenge with listing a home of this nature is that the addition that was put on in 1989 was put on to accommodate an extended family situation. Anecdotally, we believe it to be the owner's then owner's daughter and grandchild. The house continues to be ideally suited for that extended family use, and really for nothing else. I mean, the idea of renting it to individuals outside the family is kind of a long shot because it's such close quarters. They share the pool on the accessory dwelling. The pool on the primary dwelling is overlooked by a deck that is higher than the pool in the accessory dwelling, so you're looking down on it. It doesn't lend itself to outside the family. The bylaw is in place specifically to legitimize these extended family homes that exist in town of Scituate. The potential buyers of this home looked at the home and said, gee, that's great. What can I use it for? And the answer at this point is it's a 6-bedroom colonial with an au pair or in-law, but I don't find in any of our bylaws the definition of au pair or in-law. You know, so Russ's intention here coming to the board is to clarify that so that as a representing the seller, we are able to say the planning board has approved an accessory dwelling so that if you want to have a separate housing unit here for a family member, an uncle, cousin Frank's child, I don't know, whatever, it's completely legitimate. This is purely an attempt to clarify for a buyer what the property is that they're buying. It's not, doesn't make it any more saleable. A 6-bedroom colonial in the town of Scituate has a certain market. Families with 2 children aren't looking at a house this size. Families with a in-law situation or an extended family situation are seeing this as an attractive opportunity. And the last buyer had, it was not conditional. Their reason for not going forward with the PNS had nothing to do with the board's action. Matter of fact, it took place prior to their even being aware, that they could have been aware of the board taking place. So. But it's just to clarify so that the buyer knows what they're getting into. It won't affect the asking price one way or the other.
Well, I appreciate the looking at the plan and seeing what can be done to reduce the overall square footage. I guess just based on our last meeting, it seemed like the neighbors were certainly willing if a new owner had a grandmother or had an uncle, as you stated, or had someone, but I think the concern is that it's just an unknown. So that's why I was curious as to why this is being done before the sale, because it might be something after the sale where the new owner does have a grandmother that needs a home or an apartment, and it would sail through no problem because
I would suggest that to apply a bylaw specific to individuals who are owning houses opposed to bylaws specific to the residents is inappropriate. We're not, in the sale of a home, in that situation, you might typically have a personal sale agreement that's contingent upon action of the board prior to the closing of the sale. And Russ felt that would be something he didn't want to wait on.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that contingency. I just was sort of an agreement that they could come back before the board. But anyway, all right, no further questions.
I appreciate you going back and working through this to get it to where I think the space is kind of at the right size. I guess my one question is that the storage area belongs to the primary unit. Is that right? Not to the accessory dwelling? To the primary. So the only means of access is really through the accessory dwelling though, right? To the storage area? Had you considered adding a door somewhere? To provide...
It's virtually impossible to put a door in there.
Okay.
The back wall on it is approximately 4 feet high. The side wall is about 3 feet high. That would require excavating down, cutting...
Oh, this is below grade.
grade.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. I think as long as we can designate this storage room as being part of the primary dwelling, lock it off, and, incorporate the deed restriction, then I think the applicants asked what we asked them to do. I'd be okay with it.
I agree with Steve. We've got here what we hoped we would get back from the applicant. We've got a precedent for this kind of storage space, not counting it as part of the square footage of the accessory dwelling. An accessory dwelling that we permitted on Hadley Road only a few weeks ago. So I would have no problem. I can think of a few kind of tweaks that would make the entrance slightly better, but that's going to be up to the new owner. As far as I'm concerned, doesn't have to stand in the way of this situation or approving the permit here and now. So I'm good.
Well, I think my colleagues have basically said what I was going to say. It seems like you've worked with us, and you know, we have a precedent for this storage area. I think we can get this done.
Okay. Before I get comments from the public, I guess there was a concern as to some of the letters being sent in, whether we've got received them or not. I can go through the list, but we have a folder of all the letters that have been, the folder's complete with all the letters that we've got on it. So I'd rather go through them all, but if you have any questions as to whether your letter was received, you can look at it after or probably later in the meeting. Comments? Questions so far?
My name is Rich McDonald. I live in 108 Arbor Way, diagonally across the street. I guess a couple of concerns about what I've heard here tonight. I know a lot of people talked last week about purchasing a home in a single-family area, and that was the draw of the whole thing. I heard Mr. Tippett say that there would be a long shot for somebody to rent that place, when we know that in the last few years there's been at least 2 people that have rented in that place. That also goes to the ability of the town with their resources to enforce these kinds of agreements. I know there was an issue about square footage, and it sounds more to me like they're calling a bedroom a storage room now. It's still accessible through the accessory dwelling or whatever you're calling it. So calling it something different doesn't change it. So it still has the same effect on the neighborhood. And there's no way possible that I see where the town's going to be able to enforce people putting bedrooms and kids or anybody else into that second room. So this is all kind of, number one, it has been rented at least twice that we know about. So it's not a long shot that it's going to be rental. And calling a bedroom a storage room, I don't see how that changes anything when it's completely unenforceable.
Anyone else? Young lady in the back, just introduce yourself.
Kelly Saluti, 121 Arbor Way Drive. I live directly next door to him. The accessory dwelling, I look right at that every day. I am a single family, myself and my husband. I have 2 children, so I heard a comment saying that a single family with 2 children, it would not be, I forget the word you use, but somebody desirable to purchase a home like that with 4 bedrooms and au pair suite. My husband and I both work full-time. We make a very nice, comfortable salary. I can certainly see myself moving into a 4-bedroom with an au pair suite. Plenty of my friends and colleagues have au pair suites. So that is something that I would be slightly open to, but a rental property in the town of Scituate on Arbor Way Drive in the Christian School neighborhood with my 2 young children is unacceptable to me. There is obviously a huge drug problem on the South Shore. It's definitely known in Scituate. There are heroin addicts. I do not want a rental property next door with my 8-year-old and my 5-year-old. It is appalling that somebody would even think to put something like that in Scituate on Arbor Way Drive. And it's a school neighborhood. It's Arbor Way Drive with Cushing Elementary School. I think it's just appalling, and I'm completely against a rental property. And I also agree with Mr. McDonald. How is the town going to enforce a lock and putting in a deed for locking a storage room?
Thank you. Okay.
Jenny Laughlin, 102. I question why Russ and his family purchased that house in the late 1990s, I believe. And they purchased it as a single family in a single family neighborhood. Arbor Way has always been a single family neighborhood. Now, Russ has, his family situation changed, and then he started renting that property, the property that he wants to, as a, what do you call it? The addition, which my son did build in the late 1880s for the Mailhots, who wanted it for their daughter and her son. And that's what it's intended for, a family member. And what he has done since then has rented it out. And he rented it out for several summers to Mr. Tibbets's mother and father. So there is a definite connection there. But that is unacceptable in that neighborhood. It's a fantastic neighborhood of single home dwellings. Why you're going to allow a two-family dwelling in that neighborhood, you're going to start something which is going to become rampant. A lot of people are going to become money hungry, and they're going to want, oh, now I can, if I add on this much, I can have a two-family dwelling. Is that what you want the Arbor Way estate, the whole section to become? I'm really, really disappointed if that is your intention. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, through you. Just to clarify, the Williams did not rent the property to my parents. My parents resided in the property in the summer as their guests. They were neighbors in Naples. My mother and Russ's late wife were friends from the time she was 16 years old. It was a very close relationship. Couldn't have been any closer. They attended Russ's children's weddings as grandparents. It was not a rental business situation. I presented a suggestion of that. As far as the Arbor Way neighborhood goes, we have a bed and breakfast in the Arbor Way neighborhood. We have another accessory dwelling in the Arbor Way neighborhood. This is not a first situation, and it's consistent with what the town has done with this bylaw to seek alternative housing options for our citizens. And I'm a former member of the school committee and currently a middle school teacher in Marshfield, and I would recommend not that we be bringing drugs into our town. I think that's an offensive suggestion.
Let me do a little housekeeping. At 8 o'clock, we have a site plan waiver for 126 Rispers Road. With your permission, we'll continue through with this. Thank you.
Just one further point. Mr. Tibbetts made the point that this would have no effect on the value of the property. And I guess my question would be, if there was not going to be any effect on the value of the property, why is this hearing, why is this permit even being requested while the property is under for sale? If it's going to have no effect at all, why go through all of this, hire lawyers, and go through this whole process?
100%.
The simple answer would be, it's his right to do under the bylaw, number one. And number two is, as we discussed last week, he wants to have the use of the property conform to the bylaw. And one of the reasons this bylaw was enacted was to make these types of situations that are prevalent throughout Scituate under the control of the town hall, the planning board, the building department, and to legalize what has been for years murky situation. It's that simple.
I am Julie Paul. I live at 122 Arborwood Drive. I live diagonal to that property. My question is, he doesn't have a vested interest in the neighborhood because he's leaving the neighborhood. So why seek something that he's not even going to seek the benefit from? It's not going to benefit our neighborhood, and he's leaving, so he doesn't have a vested interest. I'm against it.
Patrick Paul Saint. I live at 122 Arborwood Drive also. Question is, if this is made into an apartment dwelling, quote unquote, does this depreciate our property values that we've worked so hard to increase? Can you answer that?
I'm not sure that I can
Not
answer.
really.
I don't think there's any evidence that would indicate that it has a negative impact on.
If it's proven to be an apartment, two units,
Well, it's an accessory dwelling by definition.
well, accessory dwelling, that you can sublet as an apartment, correct?
Correct.
Then that would depreciate our property values, because none of us, they'll say, you want to go sell your property for X amount. Well, you live next to an apartment building. You don't want to pay that kind of price.
And I mean, Russ has been very responsible about the people that have rented it. There's been more than one. But that doesn't mean that whoever lives there after Russ moves away will be as responsible. And you know, I grew up in a 3-family house. I know I have a lot of friends that own 2-family houses. And I know that, you know, you can rent property with the best intent. But boy, if you get the wrong tenant in there, it can be a problem not just for the homeowner, but for everybody in the area. And there's really no way to police that until it's too late, and then it's a long, drawn-out process to try to get it corrected. And that would affect the property values in the houses surrounding.
The lady right in front of you.
I called Caldwell Bankers maybe a month ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, and I gave them a hypothetical situation. My daughter lived in Florida, blah, 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 and she was interested in moving to the South Shore, and the house would be very appealing and so forth, especially where it had a rental income. They promoted it, the Caldwell Banker. The gentleman I spoke with, and when I called a couple of weeks later, I spoke with another lady, and she promoted it as an income property. So what I'm saying is that this is not going to turn out to be a little nanny from Britain or whatever. This isn't going to happen. What's going to happen is this is going to turn into a rental property. Now, I mean, either it is or it isn't. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but the Caldwell Bankers that I spoke with, the realtors, both of them promoted it as a rentable apartment with accessibility to an income on a monthly basis. And this is their words, not mine. And when Mr. Tibbetts was at the meeting last time, he said he was a school teacher. He neglected to mention that he was a realtor.
No.
You know, I mean, you have a dual personality here. You're one, you're both.
Let's,
Let's
yeah.
I think
bring
it's
it back to
quite
what
true
we've got
anyway.
on here.
You know, I mean, his name is on the sign.
But I would submit there's been
No, but you didn't
some
offer the
discre-
information either, sir.
Excuse me, if you want to discuss it individually or together, you can go us in the hallway. I would submit, based on what you're telling me, that it may be misrepresented because at this point it's not an apartment. It's basically a 6-bedroom house.
How can it be a 6-bedroom, one of them is going to be turned into a storage area?
Right now, it's a 6-bedroom house. It's not an accessory dwelling. Anybody else?
Can I ask a question of Mr. Tibbetts? How much is the house for sale right now? What is the price of the house?
I'll allow the question. I don't think it's germane to our conversation.
So you will allow me
No, I will.
I believe we have just a price reduction. It's at 535.
530, may I make a comment? I'm just curious, if the house is sold and you approve the accessory dwelling, the house would remain at 535, is that correct?
The selling price is immaterial to what we're talking about.
Well, the subject was brought up that Russ is not going to gain anything monetarily by going through all this. I would challenge that.
I look at
It's
it,
still not germane.
I look at it
Not
as
germane.
he's got certain property rights that he's entitled to and he's exercising one.
And I'd like the citizens to know that, I mean, theoretically, if he had gone through this process, let's say 6 months ago or a year ago, and did have a young daughter or a grandmother living in that, it would be his right to sell the house and that would be an approved accessory dwelling. I mean, once any accessory dwelling that has been approved, the house is sold, the one thing I believe, Laura, right, that they have to come before us and sign the affidavit that what they will live in either the primary or the accessory dwelling, is that correct? But
The
there's,
ones that you condition.
right, but there's no other restrictions at this point that it has to be a family member for any other accessory dwelling within Scituate. That is the current bylaw, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's the one.
So how many bedrooms are we speaking about now? I'm a little confused.
The current proposal would be for a one-bedroom accessory unit.
So, if you have 4 in the primary, and you have 1 in the accessory, am I correct? Or are there 5 in the primary?
Yeah, there are 4.
There are 4 in the primary, I believe.
Okay, so that would knock 1 down, would it not?
That
So
would
now
be-
you've got 5.
That's
You've
correct.
got a 5-bedroom colonial.
4-bedroom primary and a 1-bedroom
Yeah,
accessory
okay. With a storage area.
with a storage
That belongs
area.
to the primary.
That's correct.
And the accessibility to the pool from the accessory dwelling is not a concern? Or is there accessibility to the pool? Because the pool belongs to the primary.
Well, that's, I think, the
I
question.
don't know, I've never been in it.
Well, the question was, is that
Upstairs.
that was going to be difficult to make entrance from the outside, from the pool area, because of the way that the ground was to the outside, because there's a 4-foot, the ground is up 4 feet
Yeah, it's
on the
above-
side,
yeah.
on the side of that wall. So it'd be very difficult to make a door to the outside.
But in a liability sense, should a family move in there with a child?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about liability here.
Are there windows in
Wouldn't
it?
that be a liable, I mean, wouldn't that be a no?
Yeah, I don't think we have that, that's not in our particular jurisdiction per se on
So you
this
wouldn't be
board.
concerned about that?
I am not a lawyer, so,
I think we're going
Or
far
insurance.
afield.
But we just, with one more question, are we saying that the storage area belongs to the primary,
Yeah.
but it's part of the accessory? Well, it was a second bedroom, but it was a second bedroom in the accessory.
Now it's not.
Now we're calling it a storage area for the primary. But if they were calling it a second bedroom for the accessory, it's got to be part of the accessory.
It was.
well, that's why we're,
Came back and changed it.
the
Well,
deed
but they didn't
restriction.
move it, they just called it something.
Right, but that's why we would say, as part of
Why we
the
condition it.
conditions, we would have that be locked, and we'd say that no one could ever use that.
Okay, but who in the town is ever going to know that it's locked?
I got 3 people, 4 people talking at
Oh,
the
yeah.
same time. Let's try it
Did
again.
you say that part of the conditions is it's locked? Who is part of the town of Scituate or anywhere else is going to know that that door is locked? I mean, it hasn't been approved for rental to this point, and it's been rented. So how is that ever going to be enforced? And I'm not criticizing anybody here, it's just a resource issue. How would you ever know?
One thing I could suggest to the neighbors is that they're obviously very interested in this property and very diligent about the comings and goings in this property. And they have reason to suspect that it's being used as a 2-bedroom. I'm sure that they could talk to the building inspector and ask him to enforce the bylaw and the special permit.
Let me ask this question. Are the windows in the second bedroom?
Yes.
The non-storage area? Were they to be removed, then in effect it could not be a bedroom.
We could, but
I think that,
the windows.
my understanding is that a bedroom requires a window.
Correct.
So if the windows were removed, then in effect it could not be a bedroom.
When you say removed, do you mean bricked up, or do you mean physically removed?
Made inoperable, I guess, so that they would no longer be considered windows.
Frame it in and just
Mhm.
put a wall there
Right.
instead
Put
of
it
a
up.
window.
Boarded up.
Yeah. Am I right in my?
You're correct. It would not be habitable space at that point.
What about a closet? Is that required in a bedroom?
Well, we were thinking about removing that closet,
Remove the closet?
yeah.
Remove the windows.
Yep. A closet is required in a bedroom, to answer your question.
Oh, it is? The closet is required for
Yes.
bedrooms?
Anything else from the public? Ed?
I will only suggest that again, the idea is to make this a property that can be used by any number of family arrangements. If it's not to be used as a accessory dwelling and to be used as 6-bedroom,
survive.
Yes. It can be so, it's currently a 6-bedroom colonial. If the accessory dwelling is not utilized, the permit is not utilized, one family can live in the entire property as a primary residence, undemised, not using the permit. If you, as I think the chairman said, if you made the window inoperable, that would make it an unusable living space because it couldn't be, it doesn't have secondary egress from the bedroom. A closet is, by definition, storage space. So a closet in a storage space is not, it's storage space, it's storage space.
It's
And
redundant.
It's enforceable by the code enforcement officer. And it would just make a phone call to say, it's being used as a 2-bedroom. He goes in, has to see it, declares it a violation of the special permit, and it stops. That's why we want the permit in place. People can use the property as it's allowed.
How would you know this? I mean, you go by, you don't know what's going on. Mr. Tibbetts?
Any other new comments?
Yeah, we can
I just have a comment. Now, as I understand it then, if he is granted the accessory dwelling, does that mean that he can charge rent?
He can do whatever he wants to do with
He can
it.
do whatever he wants to. He's
It's allowed
already
by-
been charging rent, and that's illegally. So, you know, and so you've had no control over the fact that he already did. So,
This will give us that control. He can charge rent under the bylaw. Anybody who has an accessory dwelling can charge rent. It's not limited to family members or anything else. It's approved in the bylaws of the town. If you want to change that, we have to go to town meeting and change those bylaws.
Correct.
He could, as anybody else in Scituate, have up to a 3-bedroom room.
Anybody in this room can do it.
Right, and you wouldn't need to have it,
Charge rent.
you wouldn't need to call it an accessory dwelling. You could
Correct.
simply rent out a bedroom to
it's a
someone.
two-family.
No, it would be.
Is that right?
You can, I'm speaking as a member of the zoning board. You're allowed 3
Lodgers,
lodgers without a permit.
Right.
You're also allowed a 2-bedroom bed and breakfast without a permit.
Right.
So what this is doing is, to the extent that it gets approved, it legalizes what he's doing.
Correct.
And also puts control on it.
Correct.
Could I, Joe Joyce, 39 Ocean Ave. I understand your concerns, but I'll just share a few things with you. I'm not related to this, but you know, when someone spends $500,000 on a home, they're very careful who they rent to, number one. I could rent out a house in your neighborhood, I could have a single-family home and rent it out, so that we have that ability. What they're doing here is they're only making something that's been going on for a while legal, that's all. I don't think you'd have anything to be concerned. It won't drop the value of your home. You have the background of those things. And I do get around the town. It's not going to affect your value at all. So I understand your fears because you're afraid it would hurt the value of your home, but I don't think it would. These are natural stopgaps with people. $500,000 to anybody is a lot of money. Anybody.
Not.
Well, it is to you, it is to me.
Okay,
To everybody in the neighborhood.
Let's bring it back and get it wrapped up. Thank you. Back to the board. What's the pleasure of the board?
Well, I just want to make a comment. I think, I don't want to speak for everyone, but, you know, I think this board is very cognizant of looking at the regulations that are before the town, the regulations that are in the bylaw. We may not always agree with them, but I think our job, that was, the citizens of this town voted us to try to adhere to this as best we can. So I think at the end of the day, it seems like the applicant, with the proper restrictions, has adhered to the accessory dwelling. That's my take.
Any other comments?
No, I think we should
We have
make
a
a
motion?
decision.
The question before I go through this, the finding of facts and the motion, on the restrictions, what is the consensus? Should we remove the,
Let me suggest where we do that. Let's see if there's a consensus as to whether we would vote to support it, and then we could go through
okay.
findings of fact to fine tune.
I would support it.
I would support it based on the proper restrictions and conditioning.
And I would too.
I'd support it. I think we should do whatever we can to make sure that second bedroom is decommissioned as a bedroom.
I agree.
Now we can get into it. Why don't we go through first findings of fact?
Okay, sure. I move to make the following findings of fact. Number one, according to the Town of Scituate Assessor's records, the property at 113 Arborway Drive is owned by Russell E.S. and Nancy M. Williams. The property is located in the residential R1 zoning district, as well as the Water Resource Protection District, Zone 2, to a public water supply well and wireless communications overlay district on a lot of 40,032 square feet. Number two, on June 24th, 2014, Russell E. Williams applied for a special permit for an accessory dwelling within a single-family house on the property at 113 Arborway Drive. Number three, according to the plan, the floor area of the primary dwelling is 1,482 square feet. The floor area of the accessory dwelling, as shown on the revised plan dated September 4th, 2014, is approximately 742.2 square feet. The floor area of the accessory dwelling will be less than the 750 square feet. It meets the size requirements of Section 530.2F of the zoning bylaw for accessory dwellings. Number four, the accessory dwelling blends with the architectural style and is of similar materials to the existing primary dwelling. Number five, the accessory dwelling is under 750 square feet in size and has one bedroom. It is subordinate to the primary dwelling. Number six, the proposed plan shows the dwelling to have a two-car garage. Outside the garage, there is room for 3 parking spaces in the driveway. This appears adequate to provide 2 parking spaces for the accessory dwelling and ample parking for the primary dwelling. Number 7, the property is for sale. The applicant has submitted a signed, notarized statement that he will live on the property. The special permit will be recorded. A future new owner will need to file an affidavit with the planning board that he occupies the property. Number 8, the Board of Health has several issues regarding the septic system operation, although that was
think maybe we
detailed.
Yeah.
Have we seen it?
I think maybe, do we have a memo back from?
We don't have a memo back from her, but she confirmed at 4:05 tonight that they did submit the revised Title V, which Mike has submitted right here, and she said it was compliant.
Okay. Well, this says that the certification that the septic system is compliant with Title V must be provided to the Board of Health prior to the accessory dwelling special permit being recorded.
So they basically.
That's
have
fine.
that.
Prior to recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can do
Just
that.
wanted to make sure.
That works.
We can leave that as is.
Number 9, one accessory dwelling unit is contained on the lot in a single-family house. It will be a separate housekeeping unit. Number 10, there do not appear to be any new exterior stairs.
Can we say there are not?
There are not, any new exterior stairs. And number 11, the application meets the standards of the Scituate zoning bylaw for an accessory dwelling special permit.
Do we vote on this first? Yeah.
Okay. Comments regarding the findings of fact? Motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
Oh, so do we want to talk about the
Let's just make sure we got everything.
number 3 before I go into that, or just wait?
Why don't we just go through and
as we go
Make a
through?
motion and then, to the extent we need to modify, we'll modify.
Okay. I move to approve the special permit for an accessory dwelling at 113 Arborway Drive Road with the following conditions. Is it Arborway Drive? Just drive, right?
Just Arborville Drive. Yeah, we could take the road out.
113 Arborway Drive with the following conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall meet all requirements of the Building Department, Board of Health, Department of Public Works, Fire Department, Water Department, and other town agencies. Number 2, except for any changes necessary to meet these conditions, any construction shall conform to the plans entitled A, period, proposed accessory dwelling application 113 Arborway Drive, Scituate, Massachusetts, 02066, revised on September 4th, 2014. First floor, comma, lower level, comma, second floor primary dwelling, comma, proposed accessory dwelling first floor, and chart of floor area. And the big one, number 3. The property at 113 Arborway Drive shall contain a maximum of 2 dwelling units. The existing primary dwelling, I'll add that, and the accessory dwelling as proposed. The footprint, number of bedrooms, and/or square footage of the accessory dwelling shall not be increased without prior approval of the planning board. The number of bedrooms in the accessory dwelling is limited to 1 in the location and size indicated on the lower level plan submitted with the application and attached to this decision. A deed restriction shall be recorded by the applicant, noting the 1-bedroom and storage room conditions, and it shall state that the storage area cannot ever become habitable space. And I would suggest that we add, there should be a lock on the door
I think we need a locked door, and we need
and the window.
a window.
Closet.
And the,
I would say the closet, in my opinion, is redundant. Once you've taken the window out of the equation, there's no way that can be habitable space. So there's
Right.
nothing that you can do there except put in storage. Tearing the closet out doesn't really change that situation.
Okay. I would also delete the word, before you get onto that, I would delete this word existing and replace it with the word primary.
well, I said existing, well, I said existing
Non-existing.
primary, you're right.
Primary.
Just
right.
primary dwelling, you're right. All right, so we are changing the word existing in the paragraph to primary dwelling. And at the end of cannot ever become habitable space, there, another sentence that there should be a,
To effect this, all existing windows shall be securely boarded or otherwise closed. No, not closed, but otherwise
inoperable.
Removed.
made opaque. I wouldn't
just remove.
bother removing the windows. Honestly, I'd just board them up. You know, all you're gonna do is take away the daylight and it's no longer habitable space. You know why? Because this is getting a little complex, and I don't mean, maybe it's not the appropriate time to bring it up. But you could possibly, very possibly, have a family buy this who needed all 6 bedrooms for their core family. Had 5 kids, whatever,
Right, and they don't go through.
and they
the-
want that bedroom,
Yeah,
and they
Cannot do it.
don't need an accessory dwelling. And so it's got to be somewhat reversible. I don't know how, honestly, I don't know how we state that, but it seems
once the
logical that that would be the case.
Once the accessory dwelling's in place, it has to be in place, right?
well, meaning,
Once somebody's pulled an occupancy permit for an accessory dwelling, it has to conform to this. If they choose to reverse that,
Right?
they'll have to go back and reverse it.
or if they choose not to use the permit, that's what
And-
I was thinking. is that they,
Then they won't do anything.
right,
They won't pull a permit, they don't have to do anything,
So
right?
is it that simple? They don't have to
I think
come
so.
back before us and have us rescind the accessory
No.
dwelling or
I think
anything
it-
like that?
It's as simple as if they want it, they come back up and they apply for it with the building commissioner. And if they get it, then the bedroom is gone.
Yeah, okay,
And if they
right,
don't, then the bedroom exists.
Right.
fine. I mean, that's my intent, so don't rip the window out.
Go ahead.
Is it okay to talk about conditions as they go through, or do you want me to wait till the end?
No,
Let's do it
over
now.
those.
Because on
Yeah.
this one, the only thing that I would suggest, it says that the deed restriction shall be recorded with the applicant noting the one bedroom and storage room conditions, and shall state that the storage area cannot ever become a habitable space. And I would just suggest that it would be clearer as to what we were just talking, you guys were just talking about, that be clarified to state that it can ever be used as habitable space so long as the special permit is in effect.
Yes.
Yes.
Because if,
That's
again,
good.
or how could you say cannot ever become habitable space for the accessory dwelling unit?
For the accessory dwelling unit, that would be fine, yeah, something like that.
Well, we need to do two things, right? First of all, I think we need to make sure that we clarify that the one bedroom applies to the accessory dwelling, the storage room applies to the primary dwelling.
Correct.
So we need to just sort of clarify that, right? Just to make sure we're going in. See what I'm
Is it
saying?
the storage area for the primary dwelling?
Yeah, she'll state that the storage area is part of the primary dwelling and cannot ever become habitable space as long as the accessory dwelling's special permit is in effect, right?
Yep.
Something like that?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm just curious, for a one-bedroom apartment, how many people are allowed to occupy a one-bedroom apartment?
No idea.
Pardon?
I said,
I'm not-
I have no idea.
Something this board
Board of
wouldn't
Health.
deal with.
It's the Board of Health. that-
Oh, the Board of Health would be, okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Okay, so we got
We
that.
get the verbiage we need for 3.
Yeah.
Did we
Karen,
get
is that-
the doors and the window stuff?
Well,
Did you
I
get that in
think
there?
maybe we need to read through it all over again, but the language on the windows, there were a couple different ideas kicking around. Can somebody read what they want to have on that?
You could probably, on item 4, you could probably replace the word closet with windows.
Yeah. I just said the windows, looking at 4, we'll put the window there. Shall be removed from storage area, or removed and/or blocked from the storage area prior to the sale of the house, which is currently under agreement.
Right.
And I would, it's no longer under agreement, so I would say prior to the sale of the house,
Prior to
in which
getting an
the
occupancy
special
permit.
permit is continues. Because it's really a special permit.
Right, it should be removed prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit under the special permit, right?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Right.
Not necessarily prior to the sale of the home.
Right.
Yeah.
That's sort of immaterial at this
Yep.
point, right?
Right.
That brings us to 5.
Well, can I?
It had locks too somewhere, right?
So, well, up above, I had written, just so at the end of, cannot ever become habitable space for the accessory dwelling, then, period, there should be a lock on the door, unless we want to say something, on the storage door, between the primary storage, the storage area of the primary unit and the accessory dwelling.
So the storage area would belong to the primary dweller.
That's correct, yes.
Just want to say something like, the storage area shall be locked.
Yeah, I was just trying to be more verbose, but that's fine.
Shall be locked and under the control of the primary dwelling.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, that's
Should be locked and under the control of the primary dwelling.
I need
And
to get it down so we can.
And then the planning board shall be provided with a copy of the deed restriction along with the recorded decision. And so that kind of ends from our verbiage on number 3. On number 4, I have the windows shall be removed or blocked from the storage area prior to the issuance of the special permit.
The windows shall be removed from the storage area or completely blocked.
Or I said, okay, or completely blocked prior to the issuance of the special occupancy permit.
Of the occupancy permit.
Accessory dwelling
Occupancy, thank you.
Accessory dwelling occupancy permit.
And then, do we need this documentation of the completed work shall be provided to the planning board
Yep.
and building department within 7 days of completion?
Correct.
All right? Okay, number 5. The owner of the property shall reside on the property as long as it contains an accessory dwelling unit. Any prospective buyers of the property shall be advised of this condition. An accessory dwelling special permit certification of ownership and occupancy from the new owner shall be completed at the closing of the house and recorded with the special permit. Recorded copies shall be provided within 7 days of execution.
I would insert or change it to read completed at the closing of the sale of the house.
Right.
Yeah.
Completed
At the closing of the sale of the house.
Of the house and recorded with the special permit. Okay.
Can I just ask a question? It's conceivable, however, that we're going to record the special permit before the house is sold.
Okay, so the recording,
It's going to be, I just don't want
On or be,
Yeah, we shouldn't really.
well, this
Okay, and how
contemplates
about-
subsequent
This
sales.
is really
I think, Mike.
sort of, this should really be sort of indicating that if you're selling the house and you have a special permit, you need to notify the potential purchaser of that, and you need to go through the process. And then
Right.
they will need to provide an affidavit to retain the accessory dwelling going forward, once it's closed.
is it
Are those,
enough?
are those affidavits of the owners, are they recorded at the registry? Or are they just?
I don't think we have recorded those. Those
Yeah.
come into the planning department. So what I was going to say was an accessory dwelling special permit certification of ownership and occupancy from the new owner shall be completed at the closing of the sale of the house and a copy provided to the planning board within 7 days.
Of any sale of the house,
Of any
right?
sale.
Right,
Of it, I'm sorry, of any sale of the house
right.
within 7 days.
I think it's through 8.
Okay, oh, that's,
Six,
no,
right?
6. Karen, did you get that?
Laura's got it.
We'll
Okay.
get it.
All right. 6, the planning board will require an on-site inspection for conformance to the approved plans and these conditions prior to a certificate of occupancy being issued for the accessory dwelling. Number 7, future purchasers shall be notified at the signing of a purchase and sale of the requirements of zoning bylaw section 530, including the requirement they live on the site and this special permit and its conditions. The planning board shall be provided with an affidavit from the owners stating that they will live on the property within 1 week of the closing, it should be
Of the sale of the house, right?
sale of the house.
The closing of the sale, right?
Of the sale.
I would also say that where it says including the requirements that they live on the site and the requirements of this special permit and its conditions, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that reads a little.
I would also, just for the sake of English, put the phrase within 1 week of the closing after the word owners, just in case the owners aren't going to be living on the property within 1 week of the closing, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's one of those.
Right.
Architecture and grammar, huh?
Wow.
Okay. Number 8, no on-street parking shall be permitted at any time. Construction vehicles, equipment shall not be parked, stored, loaded, or unloaded in the street.
I'm not sure we need that.
Well, they might be doing some construction for the boarding up of the windows. Number 9,
That's a hard one.
this special permit shall be void if it is not
Can we go back
recorded.
to number 8?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Let's
That's-
just wipe out that.
That's not something we have jurisdiction over. You know, if they're blocking the street, call the police and something might,
You have
Done
had
about
that as a standard condition.
I know, and we've never had jurisdiction over it, Laura, in my opinion.
Well, it is a special permit, so,
Yeah, I hear you.
right? So we can put what
I'm
conditions we want.
I'm only one vote, and
I think the reason is that you want the people in the accessory dwelling to be parking in the parking area as opposed to parking on the street.
I don't mind the on-street parking for that.
Yeah, I
I'm
think it's
thinking-
take out the construction
You'd like to
vehicles.
strike
Construction
construction
vehicles?
vehicles?
Yeah,
And they're not gonna have Clancy and his crane down there.
No, I think,
so-
you're definitely right about the
So
cars.
number 8 will be amended to, no on-street parking shall be permitted at any time.
Well, unless you've got somebody having a party and there's on-street parking, which happens all the time.
Well, if you're living in an accessory dwelling, you really don't have room to have a lot of parties.
Okay.
I mean, I know it's hard to enforce.
Not a
but
huge deal.
I think it's good to.
Not a typical.
I think it's good to have it, actually.
Okay.
Number 9, this special permit shall be void if it is not recorded at the Registry of Deeds within 90 days of the date of filing with the town clerk. The owner shall provide proof of this recording to the planning board. Number 10, this special permit shall lapse within 2 years from the date of its issuance unless substantial use or construction has commenced prior to that time in accordance with MGL Chapter 40A, Section 9. So just so clarification, if a family does buy the house and they want the 6 bedrooms and they don't use it, they use it as 6 bedrooms, a big house, like in 2 years, it just voids out, right?
Yep.
Okay. Just, I want to make sure I
They'd
clear
have to
that.
come back in again.
They'd have, yeah, so.
well, they actually would lose, if they don't file an affidavit, right, that they're going to live in one of the, how does that work?
Right, if they don't come in within 7 days.
Yeah,
They don't file the affidavit, they
They've
lose.
got to do a
Yeah.
whole
They're going
bunch
to lose
of
the
things.
occupancy permit
Yeah.
as an accessory dwelling.
One of the things I was going to suggest, while we're
That's a
talking
little weird.
about that issue, Stephen, is I was going to ask that something be added to 13, which is that the special permit terminate if the use is not compliant with the special conditions. And I was going to ask that perhaps we add to that, or upon the request of the owners of the property with the approval of the planning board, meaning that this owner or future owner could always come in and ask that the special permit be voided. Planning board, ask the planning board for that.
Put this board in the euphoric state.
Yeah.
Can I ask,
Not to
what
mention
would be
the
the
impact on
advantage
the
of that
neighbors.
as opposed to just not doing anything?
I guess to make it,
If they wanted the 6th bedroom
if they want
re-
the 6
re-energized.
Any confusion, number one, especially
Isn't
considering the
it-
deed restriction that's going to be placed on. I think there should probably be some mechanism to remove that restriction if the special permit is not being exercised.
Right, and they would have to undo the things that they had done to make an
Correct.
accessory dwelling,
Correct.
including removing, the stove, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
That was my thought.
principally removing the
I
stove.
don't have a problem with that.
So, number 11, the planning board reserves the right to review compliance with this special permit at any time. At the request of the planning board, an affidavit shall be provided that either the primary or the accessory unit is owner occupied. I'm just going to throw something out here before I go on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
I know Laura had mentioned that the planning board could go in and inspect it at any time. Is that something you would want to put in there?
Well, I think that.
That kind of covers it?
Review compliance cover?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I just want to make it clear,
Yeah.
since you wrote that specifically,
Yeah.
I thought. Okay, number 12.
So, just before we go,
Oh.
the second sentence there talks about us asking for an affidavit. That's sort of in addition to what's already required. This is like
Yeah,
an
I guess if
at-will
you-
request?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess if it wasn't a scheduled time to do it and you thought that
There was an issue.
something
Okay.
was going on and maybe the
All right,
owner
I
was
just want to make
not
sure I was
living on the
clear on
site.
what you're getting at there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
we'll
the
do
neighbors
that.
were diligent, and they called and said that this is not in compliance.
Mhm.
The planning board could call up and say, we need an affidavit that someone's living there, the
Yeah.
correct person's living there.
Yeah.
Okay, number 12, at each transfer of ownership of the property, a new affidavit that the owner resides on the property shall be provided to the planning board within 7 days of the closing
Of the sale of the
of the
house.
sale of the house. And number 13, I'm not sure I'm going to get what Michael had mentioned. This special permit shall terminate if the use is not in accordance with this decision and its conditions,
Or if the,
upon the request of the,
upon
I've got
the
it.
request of the owners of the property.
or upon the request of the owner of the property, or,
And with the removal.
and with the approval of the planning board with the removal of the stove.
Close enough.
Yeah, I don't think we need a stove. Or, but
Well, the
upon
stove
request.
is like the most important thing.
Yeah,
I think it's good to write in
Don't
there.
ask for the stove to be removed, you've still got the accessory.
okay. Let's get rid of the stove.
Okay.
Thank you. And so completes the conditions.
Would we need to actually approve that, Laura, or simply be notified of it?
To approve, well, this is just saying the special permit is going to terminate.
Yeah.
You don't, it doesn't say you have to approve, on the approval of the planning board.
I mean, we would
Let's
not
just-
approve it if the owner came in and asked to
I
terminate.
think
the
it gives you the opportunity to make sure that that stove is really out of there.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
fine. Yep, you're right.
Okay.
You're right.
Any other comments about restrictions or conditions?
Not for me.
No.
I second.
So I have a motion, I have a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all your assistance and hard work.
Thank you.
Accessory dwelling. Can I have
Accessory dwelling approval in history.
Oh, I don't know if you saw the paper, but Heather.
Remind me later on, I don't want to,
Two things have happened. This has been a subject to in the late spring, the zoning board of appeals. There's two things necessary in the property. Mark Fasciano runs an auto body shop. For a number of years, he was dislocated by the MBTA. Now, I'll try to be brief from the history, just to give you a flavor of this. And he moved there, the property was half the size of what he initially had. He could do work outside of an autos for like 9 years now. And there's an opportunity for him actually to get some of his work out of the weather into the street. Additionally, there's off-hour storage of trucks and motor vehicles, and this is all impervious surface where we're doing this. And in essence, the zoning board of appeals approved basically getting the vehicles out of the weather so they can idle with everything inside for the workmen, much safer situation which you had. In addition to that, the zoning board of appeals issued a special permit on determination of suitability of the floodplain. The buildings are not in the FEMA floodplain. Presently, the property is also, the Conservation Commission has held a hearing, has closed the hearing, and we anticipate on Wednesday will be issuing the order of conditions, which will also address any stormwater issues. That was my discussion with the agent, Pat Galloway. in a nutshell, but there aren't any changes of uses that are here. The egress and access is the same. There aren't any changes in traffic pattern. There isn't any change in the amount of impervious surface. And that is the reason why we requested a waiver of the site plan. It's simply stated, no answer any questions.
Good, thank you. Very succinct.
I'll say again,
Very succinct.
where is it?
Very
No, it's
succinct.
Very succinct.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I just like to encourage that. When it happens, I like to recognize it and encourage it. Laura?
The zoning board looked at this property in 2004. They approved a number of uses there that were determined to be pre-existing non-conforming. There had been some uses previously. I think there had been some fish hauling trucks and some other things that were a little more difficult for the neighbors to deal with. Some of those, a lot of those were discontinued. There were also hours set up for when the different businesses could operate in there. At the same time, there is a really good mix of different types of businesses there. So there's a lot of activity on the site. There's kind of a divider that's like a green divider. It's a row of arborvitae that kind of sits on a berm. When you go back behind that, there's a lot of things there that you can't see from the street at all, which is really very nice for people, driving by. I think that, well, we don't know how tall this building is going to be. The arborvitae, I think, are maybe about 15 feet, and the drop is going to be about 6 feet. So you add all that together, and you've got, most of the building probably will be covered by the arborvitae.
And you'd also mentioned it was a light green color? That's the proposal?
Yeah, I think it was going to be light green.
Green roof.
The roof is going to be green. Okay, yeah, they were going to bring in a rendering.
In a nutshell, that was just the rendering that was there. That's a trees out in the street, and basically that's behind the berm. That's what the roof would be.
And just so I understand the context, where the red barn, off to the right is the post office, correct?
The post office right up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is, pretty much a commercial site. It's not a single-family site. It's a different type of site. It's been that way for many, many years. The Conservation Commission did look at the property pretty carefully. They held their hearing on it. There was also a meeting today that Pat Galvin had with Sean Harris's engineer and Sean himself about how to manage the stormwater on the site. There's a lot of impervious surface in the back. There is the Scituate Brook in the back. It's kind of running left to right back there. It's not in the Water Resource Protection District. It's not, a Zone A or a Zone 2 or anything like that. But the site does have potentially higher pollutant loads because of some of the vehicles and the activities back there. And those are things that the Conservation Commission is aware of, and they're making sure that the property is going to meet the DEP standards. So I think honestly everything is being done here to try to manage a site that really, could reasonably be expected.
Is one of the buildings moving into what looks like the riverfront protection area?
Yeah, I believe it's in that 200-foot riverfront area.
Oh, the addition?
Yeah.
That's part of why Conservation Commission reviewed it.
And what did they say?
I haven't seen the orders of condition. I mean, I know they're looking at that. I did talk to Pat about stormwater from the roof and making sure that that was contained somehow. We also do have a condition that's being proposed, just that the stormwater from the roof has to be kept on the lot. There's nothing shown there as far as how it's going to be contained or whether it's going to be treated, but that's something that would have to be, it is going to be dealt with by conservation.
And this can't be permitted for construction without conservation's input.
That's right.
And orders
Yeah,
of
that's
condition and overview.
And what's the
Yeah.
use,
Well,
Use is
the-
the same as the existing uses that are on the site.
which is?
There's about 15 pre-existing uses, but the ones pertinent are vehicle storage and vehicle maintenance.
In the 7,000 square foot building?
7,000 is a vehicle storage. You will see on the back of the existing auto body shop, there's a 1,500 square foot addition to that class of animals.
What
There-
in effect he's doing is taking an operation that's currently outside,
Yeah,
and taking the trucks that are outside.
I'm amazed what he gets done there, if I were that.
I mean,
Yeah.
and basically it's providing them an inside storage so that, A, they can work on it, and two is I think it's got a better control over, anything that's being used, any chemicals or spillage or whatever. I mean, it's basically controllable now.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I guess my question was really are there changes in use because you now have an inside facility as opposed to an outside facility?
No more question.
Okay.
Zoning board of appeals.
Yeah, the ZBA really looked at this and, granted the permission to do this
I
already,
can say without
so.
a doubt that the ZBA at the initial hearing over-conditioned this piece of property. As a member of the ZBA, I was one of the over-rated.
So it's your fault?
No, I'm not sure that it was. I think it came back out, and I think that...
Over-conditioned
the
it in which
conditions,
way?
and Sean can keep me relatively honest. We're there to protect the neighborhood and protect the abutters. I think it was, to that extent, it's done. It wasn't perfect, but I think as time has progressed, it's become much better.
I have a question, just on the proposed 7,000 square foot building. You said it was already an impervious surface. Is it asphalt? Is it, what is it?
Asphalt.
It is, okay. And the only thing I might, say, I don't know if the board cares about the conditioning of the building color, or just instead of like a bright blue. I know a lot of these metal buildings can be like fluorescent colors. I like the idea that it was a light green.
Yeah,
Care?
sort of a patinaed copper green. Oh, yeah, no, I think we care, we care very much.
They approached it that way, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got a big footprint to it.
So I don't know if we want to say something like an earth tone color.
Well, I think the green that they're proposing is the right color.
But I didn't actually see that color.
On the
Oh, it
roof.
is on there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought you said that was just the roof.
Well, I
It is.
would
It's
imagine,
invisible tile.
would imagine the roof and sidewalls are the same material.
These trees are actually more tall.
Okay.
So the roof and the siding is all the same color?
Yeah. and-
It's a metal building.
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I
so-
mean,
As it
You've got a
is,
that doesn't mean
corrugated
they can't be
metal roof,
different colors.
corrugated metal siding.
without the building there, you really can't see anything
No.
beyond that.
Right. Then I think that's in a very appropriate color.
That's about as
The other
blend in as you can
comments
get.
from the board? Questions from the public?
Yeah, I'm good.
Do we have any questions from the public? Is there a motion from the board?
I think there is here. Were there any other comments?
Go with the vote.
All right. I move that the planning board finds the proposed site work and building work is minor in nature because the proposed structures are being built to accommodate pre-existing, non-conforming uses and will not increase the number of vehicles, the number of employees, or the number of customers using this site. The proposed 7,000 square foot building for interior storage of trucks and equipment will reduce the exposure of vehicles to the elements and provide for a safer environment away from the public view with a more organized site. The 1,500 square foot expansion of the building containing the auto body repair business will be located to the rear of the building to accommodate work which is being done outdoors, and no increase in customers is expected. There is adequate parking and maneuvering ability on the property for the existing uses, and they are appropriately screened for a residential area. The existing arborvitae and chain link fence along the rear of the automobile sales area and an approximate 6-foot drop behind this provides screening. Can I make a, no, I guess maybe not here. I was gonna make a comment about the color. You didn't put the color in there anyway, right?
No, but there are
Just do it when we
conditions
get the
coming up,
conditions.
Okay,
so.
all right. Sorry. In May 2014, the Zoning Board of Appeals authorized a change, extension, or alteration of the proposed pre-existing non-conforming uses to allow the proposed construction. Numerous conditions were previously imposed in a ZBA decision in 2004, including elimination of the fish hauling trucks from the site, new limits on hours of operation for several businesses, and planting and maintaining evergreen screening. Based on these findings, the planning board grants the site plan waiver for owner Ryan Allen, LLC, and applicant Sean Harris to construct an addition to the auto body shop and a new metal prefab building subject to the following conditions. Number 1, construction shall comply with the improvements shown on a plan entitled Proposed Building Plan at 126 First Parish Road, Scituate, Massachusetts, prepared for Ryan Allen, LLC, care of Sean Harris, revised date August 5th, 2014, submitted with application. Number 2, approval is contingent upon all local approvals being obtained from the town of Scituate. Number 3, the 7,000 square foot metal building shall be screened by the existing chain link fence and tall arborvitaes. These shall be permanently maintained to provide screening for the building. The board shall be advised of any changes to the screening.
This
No-
is this where you'd want to put something about the color?
What, do we want to say it's a,
You say the color should be similar to that of the rendering.
oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. The color of the proposed 7,000 square foot metal building shall be similar to the rendering submitted on, is it the same date, 8/5/14?
Submitted tonight, right?
September
9/11.
Okay, submitted 9/11/2014. Number 4, an as-built prepared by a registered professional shall be provided to the planning board prior to receiving a certificate of occupancy. Number 5, all roof runoff must be contained on the site. And number 6, a construction schedule shall be provided to the planning board prior to obtaining a building permit.
The only one question is at the outset, based on the findings, we probably submitted a letter to say, plan waiver by owner and applicant, Ryan Allen LLC, and strike the name of the manager. So if it's a waiver for owner and applicant, Ryan Allen LLC, and applicant Sean Harris, he's the manager, that's the legal requirement.
That's fine.
Okay.
Other than that, it's great.
I'm sorry, did you say and manager Sean Harris, or you want to take that all out? Get it out.
Yeah,
So,
LLC.
based on
Owner
these
and
findings,
applicant.
the planning board grants the site plan waiver for owner and applicant Ryan Allen LLC to construct an addition to the auto body shop and a new metal prefab building subject to the following conditions.
Laura, on number 4, what do we want as-built of? Is it a site plan we're looking for, the buildings themselves, both?
I think a site plan.
Okay. So should we say site plan?
Yep.
So I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a arborvitae, but then arborvitaes or arborvitaes? That's a hard one. Or plural,
It's
arborvitaes.
not, like, you think it would like be arborvita and arborvitae, if you ever took Latin. 'Cause
Right.
the A is like the plural. You
So I
took
guess I
Latin.
should be arborvitaes. I should have said that wrong. but
I
anyway.
think it's just, I don't think there's an S on it.
Just arborvitae.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, que sera, sera.
You've already, no, wait a minute. Yeah, you've already got the plural. with an AE.
We left your thermos. My brother and I
Your
used
thermite?
Thermite. Yeah, we always used. Don't stack the thermoses. We don't have any thermoses. We have
That
thermite.
brings us to the next agenda item, discussion and possible bylaw amendments for annual town meeting.
Maybe we should do the easy one first?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Which one is that?
the short one.
The flexible?
Okay. I will let you lead us through the discussion.
Okay.
Let me give you this before you forget.
Everybody got their flexible?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got one in this pile someplace. Take this.
Take this.
Those are the letters for the
Oh, the letters for the,
113 Arbor.
There's white powder in some of those, I don't know what.
It's powdered sugar from the donuts.
Powdered sugar in the donuts.
That's an unknown.
Not a good day to make jokes about white powder.
Everyone should have one.
It's in the pile.
I saw it and I wasn't sure.
I'll just have like 15 more, so. Oh, the one that you got, the carrying has nice red
Mhm.
lettering. The other one has purple.
Oh.
Ah.
So,
Did you get it?
Oh, may I? Thank you.
The selectmen have been talking a lot about open space that's donated to the town. And I didn't first think that the open space with the flexible open space developments was going to be included in that, because it's kind of not exactly donated, because there's sort of a quid pro quo with it, where they get the increased density, so they give up the open space. But if you look at it like under a really, under a microscope, the tax revenue is a little bit less because when that land is on the tax rolls, it's taxed as marginal land, but it's still taxed. So you get some revenue from it, but then when it's donated to the town, that revenue's gone. So I guess I can see where maybe there's some justification for considering it donated. But regardless, they're considering it donated. So they have a list of things they want to consider, and they really want to take a look at any land that the town accepts. I think the idea is that possibly it could be other uses of open space with these types of developments, because it's governed by state law. We have to do what the state law says, and it says that it has to be open space. Open space or park land, but you can't have any parking with it. You can't have any building on it. So you couldn't very easily just put a playing field down next to a development. Not that, that would be like a good selling point for development, to have a playing field that's open to the public. That probably wouldn't ever happen. So that's just a long way of explaining why these changes are coming about. Right now, with the way the flexible open space is written, the open space pretty much has to be donated to the town, and the state doesn't require that. That's something we were doing in Scituate because we thought it was a good thing back when the bylaw was revised, I think in 2010. It was changed that way, but it can be owned by a homeowners association. It can be owned by a conservation trust. If it's owned by a homeowners association, there's still a little bit of tax revenue going in. And
So the homeowners association pays taxes on it?
Yeah.
We,
There'd be
Just
an
so-
assessment
even if
similar
they're-
to the one that would.
Can they form as a 501c3 and not pay taxes? Or, I mean,
Sure they could.
well, I suppose,
Sure.
yeah, they could, but they
Yeah.
have to be a conservation trust. They couldn't just be any 501c3.
now, like in our particular case, I know that we do pay taxes on what we call there are 8 houses, right, in the development, and there's common land, which is not donated, it's not the open space. So we do pay taxes on that, but we're not paying the taxes on, because we donated the open space. So what you're proposing is, potentially, if that was, instead of deeded to the town or donated to the town, but to the homeowners association, would that be taxed as the same as the common land?
Probably, yeah. And it wouldn't require that it go to a
Right.
vote. It would just
Say it's a possibility.
create another option.
Yeah.
So that, for instance, if a developer came in and they wanted to get this development through, and the selectmen maybe didn't want to accept the land as open space, they would have an alternative. They would have a way to still do the development with the smaller lots and with the open space. It's just that the open space would go to the town and the homeowners.
So what this contemplates is the town not accepting that donation, basically.
Well, they can, but they wouldn't have to. It wouldn't have to.
So if it went to a homeowners association, it would have to come with a conservation restriction to the homeowners association?
It would have to be deed restricted as far as no building.
Right.
And, no.
Open access?
Well, actually,
It
if you
wouldn't
look,
have to be accessible to anybody
if you look
else
back in
other than
E,
the homeowners.
it says that.
What?
I think if you look up in E, it talks about it being deeded, or deed restriction, right there.
But the way I read these changes, it basically says, if we're dealing with flexible, we go to selectmen up front and ask them, look, there's an opportunity here that some land could be possibly donated. Do you have an interest? And if the answer is no, then what we've done is created an alternative path for them to come back up and put that land into conservation and still maintain an flexible open space.
Right.
Yeah, and they wouldn't have to go to the selectmen. You could just decide up front, we really just don't want to be bothered. We'll just give it to the homeowners association because that's just easier for us. Or if it's land that, that they think that the town might want.
If I was to put 305, the question becomes is would I prefer to have 305, the land there, provided to under control of the town or under control of the homeowners association?
To the town?
Well, I think definitely the town.
Yeah.
Right.
But when the plans come in, they get circulated around to all the departments, including the selectmen. And the water resource committee. So presumably, at least the water resource committee would be like proactive and say, gee, we really want this. And where it's a special permit, you have more negotiating power, so you could press them to give it.
But I guess the
So
way
it's not, is it not I'm sorry, Bill.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, finish your question.
No,
Didn't mean to interrupt.
so the way that I interpret it is that you go to selectmen first, and if there's no interest, then you look for the alternative.
No, well,
This sounds like it's the
we
developer's
say
option.
that. Somewhere in here, it says that the planning board shall request the opinion of the board of selectmen on the use of any open space proposed to donate to the town prior to the start of the public hearing. So that means it's already proposed for donation to the town.
Okay.
And I think actually,
So who does the proposing? The developer?
I think instead of, well, the developers kind of propose everything that we get.
Yeah, but when they propose now, they only have two options, right?
Well, they pretty much only have one. They have the donation to the town.
Can't they get a
because-
conservation restriction?
Yeah, but that's really hard to get.
I know, but that's an option.
It's an option.
What about the Maxwell Trust? Isn't that available to them?
Yep, that's available to them, and I think we have that in here. I can make sure that that's in here.
Okay. But that's an interesting situation, though. As it stands now, if the proposal's made to the town and the trust, and for whatever reason, the proposal's not accepted, does that then preclude that developer from creating a flexible open space development?
I think it basically does.
Because there's nowhere to,
Yeah, and I think we
nowhere to give the extra land to.
Yeah, and I think that the planning board doesn't want to be in that position of
No.
saying that this development can't go forward.
But on the flip
Or-
side, though, to avoid all of that, developer can come in and say, I'm just plugging it into the homeowners association. I'm not gonna give it to anybody, right?
If we make these changes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what this is about.
exactly right, which I think is very wise.
I don't know about that.
Well,
Well, it's
otherwise, if you've got, say Benjamin Studley Farm wasn't able to do a flexible open space development, you know, if I'm remembering the plan that was originally brought to us to justify the number of house lots that could be put on that property, it had, you know, this is another thing that we might want to address someday, but the lots, in order to make up the required size, had these rat tails that were running all the way back through the wetlands, and, I mean, it was nuts. It made much more sense to do it flexible open space. If
Yeah, well,
that land donation to the town had not been accepted, we would have been, you know, the other alternative would have been those rat tail lots.
right, and so that's a different issue to address, is lot shape, right? It doesn't, shouldn't get solved with this, right?
No.
This is a different issue.
It's less likely that you've got to address it.
But, I mean, I would imagine that there might be developers that would say, you know, who knows if the town wants my land or not? And I don't really want to, you know, I'm representing some client, I don't know if I really want to take that risk. You know, maybe their land isn't anything really special, or it's just a sliver. You know, we've had that Cornerstone Estates was like that. Maybe it's just a sliver, and it's not something that would really add value as far as the town is concerned. So is there still a way to do a flexible open space?
Right, and so the homeowners then have the responsibility and liability for the open space. And there's no necessarily public access associated with that. Right? So it's sort of a different animal if it ends up in the homeowners association as opposed to in a piece of open space accepted by the town, right? And then, so then you have to evaluate that against, you know, what public benefits are there at that point then?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if someone came in and they had land that was proposed to be donated to a homeowners association, and they thought there was a really strong case to be made for the town to get it, certainly bring that up.
Now,
I'll
with this,
get to you in a minute, Bill.
Sorry?
I said I'd get the bill in a minute.
Oh.
He's duly raising his hand.
Couldn't see back here.
oh. So, yeah, I just want to make a comment that you don't think it would be used by either this board or the selectmen or anyone in town to not accept property to get it, to make sure that it was on the tax records?
Oh, yes, it will be.
See, I see this as a potential thorn to a little bit, because like someone could have an excellent, let's say, piece of property with a lot of the beautiful land that they want to give to the town.
Yeah.
And then the selectmen say, no, we're not going to do it. And they say that, or we say it, because we think, well, why should we be getting this free piece of land? Don't we want to just keep the taxes?
Well, I think that's a possibility, and that's, I think, part of why they adopted this policy. They adopted it back in December, and the policy says that they're going to look, you know, very carefully at any proposed donation of land.
Okay.
So
Is there a written policy
they
on
only
this?
want,
Yeah.
wait. They only want to accept land that they see really adding value for the town as a whole.
I see.
If it's really just adding value to your development, then they might accept it, they might not accept it. But
Okay.
having.
Who makes that
The hurdle
decision?
before we get there is, the question is it beneficial to the town? In other words,
Yeah.
right, because that's a trade-off, you're trading off saying, I agree to take this land, and in
Right.
exchange for that, I will give you the benefits of the flexible open space.
Right.
So there's a public benefit that we've assigned to that already.
Yeah,
But the
the
public-
only problem is this level have a different take on it.
But, yeah, I understand that, and I go back to 305. 305 Country Way sits there, and the difference on the tax rolls is what, $500?
Yeah.
So for $500, I'm gonna sit there and say to myself, I'm not gonna forgo $500 for the taxes, but yet I'll take that piece of property, which is instrumental in protecting the water supply, and we're gonna sit there and say, we'll put that under the homeowners, as opposed to coming back up and putting it under the town.
Well, again, I think that's something that would be negotiated while you're discussing the plan. But the selectmen are already looking at these parcels, you know, through a really kind of, you know, fine lens, because I've had to come in front of them for 214 Clap and also 305 Country Way, and those seemed like they would be slam dunks, but nothing is really a slam dunk. I mean, everything gets vetted very carefully, and even with those, there was a lot of discussion about it. So, so they would have those discussions with every piece of land. They're going to do that already.
So what was this, so 305, what was the discussion?
The discussion was whether or not they wanted the town to accept that land. And that was
Because?
a pretty short discussion.
But because?
Because the reasons why they've adopted this policy, I really don't know. But because they've adopted this policy, that they want to be very careful about what land they're accepting. They don't want to accept land that to them doesn't have any purpose having the town own it. Yeah, but there's no real purpose for the town. That benefits the town.
I wouldn't argue that, but I'm not sure that that's the type of property that comes inherent with a flexible open space.
Right, I mean, it's sort of quid pro quo there, right?
Well, yeah, but I've had that discussion about, several times with Tricia. And we have a whole email chain I'm happy to share with you. And it surprised me that she took the point of view that she took. But after I really thought about it, I could see it. So, I mean, I can still see the other side too. But as long as the selectmen are really vetting every single parcel, I think there may be some, those two they didn't turn down. Those two they saw the benefit and everything was fine. But there have been other developments where it hasn't been so clear that there's a benefit to the town. And with something like that, there could be all kinds of reasons why the flexible is better, but we've eliminated an option that makes it easy to do it. And we had that option up until, I think, 2010. That was, from when it was adopted, in 2002 to 2010, that option was always there. And then it got taken out because we did the, comprehensive revision of the zoning bylaw and it got taken out. So.
Bill, you were going to make a comment?
Yeah, the only comment I made on this is, from a town standpoint, I just think developers, a lot of times up front, you don't know what you're offering the town. Usually in this open space, it's kind of a give and take thing. What's everyone? I think it's a hard and fast thing. The problem from a town standpoint is if you're going to accept this, absent a town meeting, they only can do it through the care and custody of the Conservation Commission. And if it's through the care and custody of the Conservation Commission, they have to put a conservation restriction on that's approved by the state, which is a somewhat costly thing. If you look at right now, if you made a query about the CPC properties already acquired by the town in the last 4 or 5 years, you're going to find that most of them don't have the restrictions on it because the cost of doing so and jumping through the hoops takes some time. And so that's why consequently these non-profits sometimes take them. But the problem is almost universally they want a significant stewardship fee to go with it. And that's one of the reasons why the Maxwell Trust has signed a lot of these, because they weren't looking for stewardship fees. But as you may or may not be aware, they have a fairly large judgment against them that's under appeal. So there's some problems they go in the future. But the other reason for not accepting this, it's like anything else, is it's a definite liability situation unless you have something. There could be toxic drums buried on there that once the town owns it, they own the cleanup on 21E. And so, I just looking at, there may be some situations where the town wants this stuff, but to get an opinion from the select before this public hearing, I don't know from the selectmen's standpoint, I'd make that query before you adopt this, is, do they really want to entertain something?
I think they can make it determine up front whether they wanted to or not, but I think your points are valid. But even like if we took like Elm Street didn't really connect to anything, but yet we created an opportunity that had public access to it, to find the trails and that. So.
Well, it may be a question of just making the case more clearly or more explicitly than we've been doing.
Yeah, what is the real public benefit?
And then everybody's clearer about it, and it's probably good.
If the excess land in this given situation were to go to the homeowners association as opposed to the town, would there be a public benefit in terms of just taking it out of the the category of developable land, because it's going to have to be, have a conservation restriction anyway, right?
Yeah,
In other words, it
usually,
can't be
well,
further developed.
yeah, I'm not sure that they all do, but,
Okay, but
yeah.
It does
But
put-
yeah, they're not supposed to be developed in
I'm looking for what is
any
the
way.
public benefit in that situation, because, you know, the flexible open space development is predicated on some public benefit.
Yeah.
We allow the developer to do it that way with smaller lots and tighter spacing of homes and things like that in order for some benefit to accrue to the town.
Well, I mean, I think you can find it in terms of a buffer, you can find it in terms of a buffer to the adjacent development. I mean, you often have, in some of these 20,000 square foot lot neighborhoods, you often have neighbors that don't want a house backing right up to them.
Right.
They don't want the land cleared coming up to them. They'd much rather have a bigger buffer.
Yeah,
So
no, I
that's
like
one
the idea,
benefit.
don't get
I
me
mean,
wrong.
Yeah, I think there's still benefits other than ownership.
Yeah, we just need to have some rational explanation of why that's you know, an acceptable benefit in order to allow the flexible open space.
Yeah.
I think everything you say is true.
But we're saying it's a public benefit, but yet we're gonna have the responsibility of maintaining that public benefit handled by homeowners association.
That's okay. I mean, you know that obligation when you
Yeah.
buy.
I think personally, I think a developer would not want to do that because it puts a burden on, I mean, I agree with the option, but it does put the burden on the homeowners association to get the liability, as Bill said. Because if someone's walking through the open space and trips or,
In the sense that you're talking about, it's exactly like a condominium association.
yeah, no, but
So what's wrong, I mean, with that?
well, I'm assuming that based on the square
Private
footage,
property,
the
right?
property, yeah, you'd end up having to pay a greater liability insurance and so
Right.
forth. So I guess what I'm saying is
You
there
would-
is additional burden on the homeowners association.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's bad.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just saying as a developer, I'm not sure I want to go that route.
But if you were able to shorten the roads, which is something we talk about,
Mm-hmm.
if you were able to decrease the area of clearing, which is a financial benefit to you as the developer, if you were able to condense your development, get the same number of homes, the same number of lots and that sort of thing, and do it for a lot less money, then, you know, you might be, you know, there's an offset there.
Frankly, once the developers sold the land, sold the parcels, he doesn't care anyway.
Well,
Because
that-
it's now the homeowner.
Right, selling it is the key
Right.
issue there, is,
Right.
well, anyway, I see it as an option. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, I'm not sure that
Yeah.
developers and individuals want that to be the best option. And again, I'm just thinking of, like I said, my own particular experience where we do have common land that the homeowners association is paying for liability insurance as well as taxes that we have to share for that. And if that was like tripled or quadrupled, I'm not sure our homeowners association would really like that, first of all.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're right. Of course not. But what I'm hearing from Laura is that the selectmen are looking at this situation with a lot more sort of caution,
Right.
and they're pretty likely to begin not accepting, to begin rejecting,
Mm-hmm.
you know, these offers.
Well, I
So
think,
what's the alternative? Once that's not available to the developer, where does the developer turn?
Right.
well, I think one of the things that we need to understand is what is the criteria under which they would actually accept it? Because that becomes the discussion around the public benefit,
Right,
right? In a flexible open space
right,
special permit.
right.
So is that the way some of the developers are approaching it now? Hey, almost like a dumping ground, the town will take this, I'll get the flexible open space and I can build my development the way I want it. And developers are seeing that as an avenue, and now all the selectmen are saying is, wait a minute, let's not take what they're giving us. Let's, you know, not be that dumping ground, whether it's a buffer or common area or, you know, something in the middle of the development. You know, that way, the town doesn't take on the liability, and the developer that wants to build the homes and sell the homes, that's land that now that they're responsible, the homeowner's responsible, as opposed to, like I said, just pushing it off on the town so they can get the benefit. I understand the open space is a benefit to the town, but maybe not in all cases.
And I also think the open space and buffers and however you might, the environment you're going to create by leaving that open space is a benefit to the people who live in the development. I mean, I certainly would much rather back up to woods than, even if it were in common ownership and I were paying a bit of the taxes to maintain it, than to see other homes behind me, for example. I mean, that would be a very attractive situation.
Has the board commented at all? Have they commented at all?
No, I haven't distributed this around. I wanted you guys to see it first.
So I guess what I'm saying is that I don't think the fact that you're going to be paying a little bit more into the homeowners association fund I think it's more than offset by the green space and privacy and that sort of thing that this could generate.
Well, and I think also that we have had a lot of situations where it's kind of, Bob said, it's sort of the dumping ground, like, here's a bunch of land, it's our public benefit. And it really isn't. It's not even really accessible very easily by anyone, but we've kind of like, well, it's good.
Yeah, like Studley Farms, now we have to kind of come in off the other trails. And I've used those trails. I didn't know they were there, but.
I would say that's a good example, because at least it connected to the trail system.
Yeah. Right.
But I can understand, like, if it's sort of quote-unquote landlocked, if you want to, like surrounded by other development and no one can really get to it except for the homeowners themselves who probably don't even know that the access is there. Those are situations where maybe we could actually extract a little bit more public benefit from the developer than just the open space, which might be a good thing.
Yeah.
And it also preserved and protected some very sensitive wetlands areas.
Right.
Vernal pools and
Preserves
things
habitat.
like that.
Right.
I mean, it may work to our advantage to the extent that the donation of land is not as considered as public a benefit as we think it is.
Right, which may put us in a position where there's not enough public benefit to justify the flexible open space, and therefore we're back to the conventional subdivision.
Which could lead to some
Interesting discussion.
requirement to
Right.
address.
But I guess there's,
I mean, the extreme that you're gonna see is 305. I mean, that was, that conventional subdivision used to determine what the capacity is, the number of units. It was pretty well flat out designed right up against the wall.
Right. But Benjamin Studley was the same way, if you recall. I mean, there were rat tails off those lots that went for
and they
hundreds of
destroyed the
yards
house
back into
that was
back
there.
into the backland there.
Well, I mean, I guess the way I'm reading this, or I understand it, is it's just giving us another option for more discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not taking anything away
Right.
that you had.
Right.
Send it to the selectmen and see what they think.
Okay, sure. Good.
And the consensus of the board.
I think that's good.
Sure.
Okay.
And actually, I think overall, eventually, it's a good thing, because then the town's not sitting there with, not thousands, probably hundreds of acres of land that's all disconnected, that doesn't make sense. Like you said, a thin slice somewhere that doesn't really connect to anything.
We have some.
Yeah, that doesn't really offer that much of a public benefit per se.
Yep. Okay, do you want to jump over to the Form A and see if people still want to do accessory dwellings, or what do you want to do?
Well, let's do the Form A.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking me out of turn, I appreciate it. I'm sorry to actually bother you because I need to be here on the Form A. But you may recall that this was the 250 lot subdivision we did off of Water Street some time ago, and during the Mako engineering process, we discovered the original Form A lot that was provided did not carry the 100-foot lot that Peter built us. If you look at your plan, there is an inset cloud at the top of the plan, and then if you look at the elbow is basically right here. You'll see that that little section, I think it's about 80 odd, 79 feet, 83.11 feet long, carried off about a little less than a foot difference over in a triangular shape. So this Form A is simply to correct that lot width at that juncture, and the Blakely family would deem that parcel feet, 100 foot of width all the way throughout the building. Or actually, in this case, it would be 50 feet on both sides. It was discovered in the 1998 Form A plan was wrong during our engineering process. So,
Where on this larger plan is this corner?
sure,
Right here? Right?
This corner?
Yep, right here. So what happened was these two lines, that this is the lot that was created right here. They were not
So this
parallel.
79 is now 83?
Yeah.
All right.
No, I'm sorry. The 83, the 79 is from here to here, and then the 83 is from here to here. So
Mhm.
this is the
0.8
piece-
feet north of the 79.
Yes, yes. So when I spoke to the building department.
So
it
you're
was their
creating a
determination
lot
that it
here.
was not de minimis. It was too close. It was just, if it was an inch or two, yeah, you would have let it go, but because it was almost a foot, and it was created, these lots are created under special permits, you know, the structures are enabled under a special permit. It was felt that if we could get the land from the neighbor, that he would prefer us to do it this way as a correction. So, yeah.
So that land is coming out of which lot? Lot
Neighbor's
11?
Lot 4. So the original Lot 4, which is this big vacant lot down here, this is part of, this is their sort of rat tail, for lack of a better description. And fortunately for us, this particular discrepancy occurred on the corner, so it didn't affect their 100 feet of width. As you can see, this maintains the 100 feet on both sides because it's in the corner.
Oh, Lot 4, okay.
So where's your 100-foot problem?
Our 100-foot problem was right here. So this was actually, call it 99 feet. Now it's 50 feet and 50 feet.
So you need to maintain the 50-foot
Oh, okay,
access
that's-
right-of-way all the
Yeah,
way
this
in.
had to
All
be
the way
all the way
Yeah,
back,
so this had
yeah.
to come up 50 feet, 50 feet. It seems,
Makes sense.
yeah, it would have. If they did it right in 98, it would have made sense. So, that's, simple explanation.
Slam dunk.
Any comments there?
No, I mean, it looks like
Make a sentence as
a
well.
little mistake was made, and this is going to correct it, so I think it's
You want to send it.
Do I have a motion to endorse?
I don't know, do we? Oh, we have it? Okay. I move to endorse, as approval under the subdivision control law not required, a plan of land showing a division of lots 4 and 5 as depicted on LC Plan 19784-D, Town of Scituate approval not required, number 145 and number 147 Border Street in Scituate, Massachusetts, stamped by Edward A. Stone, professional land surveyor of EAS Survey, Incorporated. For applicant Eleanor Bleaky, revised date dated July 9th, 2014, as the division of land is not a subdivision because it shows a proposed conveyance or change in the lot line which does not alter the existing frontage as required by the Scituate zoning bylaw on a public way of Border Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
If I don't sign them tonight, I'll sign them in the morning. Are we good with accessory dwelling?
Mr. Chairman, could I have about a minute?
It'll take 3 minutes.
break is over. Okay. So you had a draft that I had sent around, which had kind of just a couple of changes, and then we talked about this a little bit in town hall, in the hallway, or in the building department, and there were a couple more things that Bob wanted to add, and when I just kind of go through those, This introductory paragraph to the accessory dwellings, the main change in there is that there was part of the bylaw that required that accessory dwellings be within structures built in 1989 or prior to that. Then that limit was completely taken away and you could build an accessory dwelling like brand new. So those are sometimes the ones that I think people feel have more of an impact on them because there wasn't a house there and now there's the house and the accessory dwelling kind of all at once. So some language was suggested there that the accessory dwelling had to go into a dwelling that had already existed for a minimum of 10 years when the application came in. So that was the idea. That was the basic idea there.
10 years.
Pick a number. I mean, really, that was an arbitrary number.
Yes, 3 times an average.
But the intent was that, we've seen at least three projects recently that were basically predicated and designed with the expectation of including an accessory dwelling. And that makes me uncomfortable. I think that's getting uncomfortably close to creating two-family homes, two-family houses on lots that otherwise can't justify that intensity of development.
Do you remember when Dan, or when we had several years ago, in Dan's wording, he had that, didn't he? Was it 5 years? Do you remember what the condition was?
I don't. I could go back and look. You think he had 10?
I think it had 10. I think we worked it down to 5.
Okay.
5 would, I think 5 would work also. It's just that you don't want people doing a pro forma to build a new house, based on the fact that they're going to put a rental unit in it, and that's going to be part of the way they pay off their mortgage, for example.
Yeah. However, I will say, for instance, the one that was at the Driftway Rotary,
Yep.
Or the Greenbush Rotary.
Yep.
I mean, I think that was where the accessory dwelling was in the basement, and that actually turned out quite nice, or fit the letter of the accessory dwelling pretty well.
I think it did, the letter of the existing bylaw, but I think we saw here tonight that the existing bylaw doesn't make people very comfortable.
Yeah, it's really what we're trying,
that
what are we
unit was-
trying to accomplish with accessory dwellings? That's sort of the fundamental question here, right?
I guess, though,
Yeah, certainly.
if I'm building a new house and I want to have an accessory dwelling for my elderly mother, it just seems kind of unusual that I have to wait. Like, I can't design a new house. I have to, buy an existing one or something. I don't know.
It's always going to aggrieve somebody.
Yeah.
It's a question of what the town as a whole, the majority of the townspeople, and I'm not saying you're wrong.
I think you have to look at any accessory dwelling, sort of at least at one end of the spectrum, that any accessory dwelling is not necessarily an in-law apartment. It's just an apartment, the way
Right.
the town bylaw is written now.
Well,
All 56 that you talked about the other time, they could all be just apartments, right?
Yep.
So it's, I think you have to get out of the notion of it's an in-law, kind of situation or not,
Unless we wanna
unless
make that
we
part of
want
the
to change
bylaw
it,
change.
right?
I did think about that we might want to say, based on some of the feedback, that maybe it does have to be a related family member going
Well,
forward.
Laura did some research, and that language does exist in the bylaws of towns.
It does. Now,
Well,
whether
it's-
you could get that adopted today, I don't know, because they tend to be shying away from regulating who can live in an apartment.
Because it's very hard to monitor.
Yeah.
Right.
How are you going to make sure that always exists as a situation?
Yeah, how far are you going to go? Fourth cousin?
Right,
Yeah.
right. right.
Yeah, I guess that's a
Cutting
good.
it off at third.
We're all
cousin.
related
Yeah, no, and
somehow.
anybody you can marry would not qualify.
That's a good point. Okay. Well, I don't know. do you know offhand, I know the one at the Greenbush Rotary was number 1 that we did recently, that was new construction. You said that there were 3, what were the other 2?
There's one in mine that currently circulating around, I don't know what stage it's at. And the other one that I'm thinking of is the one on Marion Road, which was withdrawn without prejudice,
I'll
but
give you another one, I'll give you the one that's right across from St. Mary's parking lot. On Cable is.
Oh, over, okay, now, what are those all examples of?
New construction.
accessory dwellings being
New
constructed
construction?
simultaneously with the primary dwelling. as
Okay,
we-
so
Well, even-
the Marion Road is a
even-
good example.
Even Moreland was that way, right? It was essentially
Moreland would have been, yeah.
Sorta, yeah,
Close.
sorta,
a
kinda,
brand-new structure, right?
yeah.
Do we have any latitude in maybe having 2 classifications, calling one an in-law where an elderly parent might be, whether maybe it's access like the one we had here where there wasn't a separation between the primary's kitchen and the way you would get to the accessory dwelling, whereas, if grandma was there, maybe there isn't a door. So I'm just thinking,
When grandma goes to the nursing home, now I'm gonna rent it out, or whatever.
I would be under the, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't mind per se, the restriction. I do think 10's a little long. I don't know. I would be in favor of 5.
Yeah, I mean, it would only be to forestall the situation of going into the deal,
Yeah. Right away, like you said.
With that as a
With the idea that
precondition.
that you're going to create a 2-family.
And that's my fear. And
Well,
you
if
know,
you take
that-
this all to the extreme, that's where you end up, right? Is
Right,
every house in Scituate is potentially a 2-family house.
potentially. I mean, we're only going to permit 25 a year under the present bylaw, so it takes a while for that to happen. But I think it's, that's the fear certainly that we've seen from the public who have been here to talk about this issue.
Yeah. But some of them, I think Garden Road's got 3. 2.
Garden Road, 3
Accessory dwellings.
accessory
Yeah.
dwellings. Yeah, it definitely has at least 2, yeah.
If I can point out another sort of perhaps more subtle meaning of this wording here, that, and this, it's mine, it's pretty much nobody else's, and I'll take the heat. It says in a residential district, basically an accessory dwelling can only be built where the primary dwelling has received all legally required permits, where the primary dwelling conforms to the current dimensional standards of this bylaw, and shall have been in existence for a minimum of 10 years, which is what we were just talking about. But what the second part of that sentence, back up one part of that sentence, and it's very intentional, is that would preclude accessory dwellings in the 5,000 square foot lot areas, because those are pre-existing non-conforming lots, and you couldn't put an accessory dwelling on any lot that was non-conforming.
That would be Seaview.
Yeah, or the Avs, or,
The little house we put down on Seaview.
Yep. And, that's pretty radical, I admit, but if you think about how tight those neighborhoods are, and you start putting accessory dwellings in there, and it's a great place for an accessory dwelling because it's close to the beach and I can do summer rentals and, all kinds of good reasons to have accessory dwellings down there. And now I've got twice the cars, twice the kids, twice the bicycles, twice the boats on trailers. I mean, the ultimate build-out of that under the present bylaws is a disaster. And even when it happens sporadically and just here and there, it tends to be a disaster, in my opinion.
So what I underlined was conform to the current dimensional standards of this bylaw. So you're saying those are the words that preclude the pre-existing non-conforming conditions.
Anything that's non-conforming.
Yeah.
Are you entertaining anything from the audience at this time? Or?
It's up to the chairman.
Yeah, let's just call it a general discussion, we'll open it right up.
Yeah, so good.
So I'd say briefly, there's a large number of homes that are non-conforming. A lot.
Yep.
You know, go right through Minot. They don't have 100 feet on the road. They wouldn't have, they wouldn't have 125 feet building line. So most homes in the town, and I'm only saying Minot because I know it.
Right, well, so do I, as you know, Joe.
You know, so if you go through the town, most homes are non-conforming. And so, in effect,
not most.
I would say a lot, all the older homes.
Many.
Because the lots in Minot were made up of 37.5 feet wide, 75 feet wide. In Minot, a big lot really is 20,000 square feet, is pretty large.
I live on a non-conforming lot on Manlot Road. I'm supposed to have 20,000 square feet, I have 18,000 square feet.
So if you institute something like that, inadvertently, you are limiting a lot of people. And one other thing I want to mention, I'm in the construction business, so I talk to people a lot. People don't make this kind of decision lightly. Very few people spend this kind of money for a tenant. They're not going to get the money back. Usually it's something to do with the family initially. It's a very large investment for people. Then when the parent dies or someone moves on, whatever the situation is, they don't have something you can't do something with. And they are providing housing for the town of Scituate. We have people work for the town itself. They really can't afford, a lot of people can't afford necessarily to buy a house. The income isn't there.
Yep.
So it's a wonderful thing for providing housing. I was born in the projects. I grew up in the city. I live in Scituate. So I've seen this spectrum. It's really a very nice way to have housing around town, quality housing for people. We have a lot of single parents, a mom with a child, and it does provide this. So I think it's a great bylaw. I do believe the future's going this way. But on non-conforming lots, I think it would be too restrictive. It's just my comment. Thank you.
Good points.
Yep, there may be a distinction that needs to be made.
Also, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV or anything. I don't quite understand how those words conform to the current dimensional standards of this bylaw would be the pre-existing non-conforming. The dimensional standards of a bylaw, when you say that's
conforming lots. That's how you're.
That's the lot in an R1 district has to be 40,000 square feet, and you need to have the 125 feet through the house and whatever.
It seems like it should say conform with current standards of.
I mean, that was the intent.
Of the Scituate zoning bylaws. To me, it seems like this bylaw. I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, no, I get your
They
point.
use language like that a lot.
Okay, but you know what I'm trying to say is like
You want
A non-conforming pre-existing conforms to the Scituate zoning bylaws.
to, well, not to
Yeah.
the current dimensional standards.
Right, but it
Well-
conforms to the bylaws.
Yes, it's a conforming lot.
But that's not what this says. I mean, it's a reason why it's written the way it's written, because, I mean, regardless of, my own opinion, I thought this was what Bob wanted to say, was
It
it
is,
had to
and I'm
conform
not
to
sure
today's.
how hard
Yeah.
to push it, but that was my intent.
Yeah, so it's really for discussion,
It's basically to address the situation in Minot, yeah, and along the Avs and along in Lighthouse Point and places like that, where you just don't want to have more people there, more cars, more everything. You really don't.
Let's think on that and move down to 530.
Yeah,
that
I mean, my
2.
thought is maybe that might be too restrictive, and again, at town meeting, that may be seen as a really, as a very restrictive clause.
Yeah, you could very well be right. It's trying to address the concerns of many people, but it's also going to be, it's going to be considered a step backwards by many other people. So,
But I think it's.
are you a Republican or a Democrat? It's too bad we couldn't vote town-wide to see how this would come out.
I mean, it represents what we're hearing at the downside of it is when it goes to town meeting, it's a removal of their property rights.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But there are property rights that were granted by zoning bylaw enactment. And they didn't necessarily exist by right. I don't know, maybe I'm not,
I guess
that's not true.
my initial take on it is that, you've got the conditions down below, which I think are very good as far as the size of it.
Mhm.
And that to me, may be enough to still have, like, let's say in Minot, you could have an accessory dwelling that's only 1 bedroom, that is a small size, that might actually end up being very appropriate, but I have a non-conforming lot. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
Okay, so moving down to 30.2F, we had some of the language here about, having this relationship between the two units and what they look like. And the language that was added had to do with the accessory dwelling not exceeding 2 stories or 25 feet in height. And I think that, some people may think that's very restrictive, but I think it actually gets to the heart of some of the issues that you've had to deal with, where if you're going to talk about what's subordinate, you're going to talk about mass, you need something to quantify that so that it's more objective and less subjective. And
Just to throw a wrench there, what happens in that situation if I have a barn that's already there, it's been there for 50 years, and happens to be higher than 25 feet, but I want to, on the second floor, put an accessory dwelling? Would this preclude that?
Probably not, because you're not talking about an addition or a separate structure. Oh, well, you are.
Or,
You are.
well, you could make this just apply to new structures, for instance.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's
That's
all
something we
kinds
need
of
to
ways
think
you could
about.
tweak it.
Because I actually agree with it. I'm just saying there might be consideration of existing structures, like a barn, that we said is actually quite appropriate for an accessory dwelling. I wouldn't want to preclude that.
On the other hand, think about the Moreland situation,
He's building a barn. Or he wants to.
which
Oh.
could likely result in the construction of I won't say enormous, but a barn of any particular
35.
size you might like to consider.
Mhm.
But now he has to wait 5 or 10 years, though. But you're right.
We would, well, that's all, it's all kind of connected.
Okay, so that's that one. Then,
That gives definition of subordinate.
Yes.
Right.
sorry?
It gives,
That helps give
it-
definitions of subordinate.
Yep.
Because I noticed in the model bylaw, they even walked away from trying to define what subordinate was.
Yeah,
It will be, but I'm not going to tell you what that means.
Yeah,
they
right.
didn't take a lot of chances in that model bylaw.
Mhm.
So, the 2-bedroom maximum, I think, again, is something that, I think there's maybe been one that was 3-bedroom. I think there've been very, very rare that have had more than 2 bedrooms. And then we go to this change in the floor area, which I think you discussed that. You've discussed that already, and this is something I think you are in agreement about, which is to have a maximum floor area rather than
Right.
the way it's written now, and to have that be either 900 square feet or 40%. The new piece here is the language about having a different standard for the R3 zoning district, which, maybe is something you want to do, because R3 is really different. The lots are really quite small compared to everywhere else, and where a lot of them are non-conforming. If you did allow these on non-conforming lots, maybe you want to go with a 750 square feet. I don't know.
just based on the Arborway, do we need to really spell out that the square footage is the square footage of the sub-primary unit, not the existing entire house? Remember there was
Yeah,
that?
because that was an interesting reading by Michael. I
Right.
thought.
Well, that's why I was proposing to add a definition of primary dwelling, and
Oh.
throughout here, it refers back to the primary dwelling. It doesn't just talk about dwelling anymore. And I think even if you don't do anything else, that would be a good change. So
They were
it's,
calling it the primary and the accessory.
it's
Somehow-
a separate unit. It's not like
It's not the
house.
existing dwelling, it's
Yeah.
what happens after the split happens, right?
Once it's
Yeah,
divided,
it's not the
right.
structure, it's just
Yeah.
the unit.
Right.
Mhm.
Because that was that all back and forth, all those emails and stuff about whether that 60/40 is approved. Yes, it is. No, it's not. If we could,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure, again, I'm not a lawyer, but if we could just clarify that to be crystal clear of what that is.
Yeah.
So there's no debate.
Confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that, and then, let's see, moving on to the building heights language, just make sure if you're in that building heights section that you know that the accessory dwellings have a different building height, so that's,
And
that's really nothing new.
Laura, I think this is intended to be the same building height that's talked about in the basic zoning bylaws about primary dwellings. In other words, the 25 feet's an average between the eave and the ridge, halfway up the slope of the roof.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I'm curious, why do you not, if they're in the business district, why are you not restricting the number of bedrooms?
well, I think one of the places where there was a 3-bedroom was in the business district, but that's not the reason why. I think the reason why is that this is another way to bring people into the business district,
Right.
to live in the business district, and, why make that, restrictive at all?
So you're kind of giving them an incentive maybe to build an accessory dwelling there by allowing it to
Right,
be
we're
bigger?
trying to increase density in the business district, I
Yeah.
think, in general, so there's no reason to restrict.
Yeah, and it has to be, part of an existing structure, so it's effectively going to be mixed use.
In the business district especially, what's the difference between an apartment and an accessory dwelling? I mean, there really is none. An accessory dwelling in the business district isn't accessory to a primary dwelling. It's simply an apartment.
Well, I believe these wouldn't have the 10,000 square foot area requirement because these are an accessory
Okay,
unit.
okay, got it.
And I'm not sure that apartments are really allowed under any other, aside from the mixed use
Okay,
and all the other things that, you
Yeah,
can do if
all
you
right.
have a non-conforming situation. So anyway, so maybe you want to just kind of,
In our,
under-
what you gave us here, are these sort of replacing certain sections of the bylaw? Or, I
I think
mean, how
everything
does
that-
it get
every-
integrated
Everything
in?
that's bolded is
Yeah.
changed.
well, on
Well,
this
what
one
about
called
530? What about the rest? The rest of it stays then, is what you're saying?
Each little opening paragraph tells you what happens, like the first one says, and this is written kind of the way an article would be written, but the first one is to add these definitions into the definition section. The next one is to add this introductory paragraph into 530, and then the last one is to take 530.2F and take that out and put this into it. I'm sorry, there's one more, and the 620.1 just adds what's there. So it kind of explains, section by section.
Now, I'm just throwing this out here. I think this is fantastic. But I think one of the problems we had at the last town meeting was we tried to do too much, and it kind of confused people.
Yep.
So I'm just throwing it out as a discussion point. Should we try to do like 2 things at a time, or I don't know?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Or was it our fault that we didn't explain it enough?
What are the most important
both.
things? Let me ask you this question. Moreland, how big was Moreland?
All three.
Yeah, 23.
2,300 on a 30,
So-
what was the base house?
House was like
4,000 something.
4,600 plus or minus, the accessory dwelling was like 1,450 something.
So if I would ask you, what's your priorities? Like, what do you find to be the most important thing to change? Because there's a lot of changes.
My particular opinion would be the size, I think. Because what's happening, like at Moreland as an example, it almost is a thing, and also on Hatherley, it's a separate house, it's so huge, right?
It's two houses on one lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to define subordinate, because that's really the dependent which we focus on.
Right.
And I think the other is the size. I think those are the two things that we need to do. And I think if we do those two, then I think we can get, at least have, maybe not total control, but we'd have a lot of control over your non-conforming, small non-conforming lots.
Yeah. We'd have more.
More.
For me, just my viewpoint, my opinion, because, I'll have something to say in a town meeting. I would say, I know your concern is inordinately large accessory dwellings, I understand it. And I watch your meetings every week, so I see where you're dealing with subordinates, very difficult. I mean, we all understand what it means. It's very difficult to articulate it when someone wants to push it.
Right.
It's difficult. I've thought about it. It's not easy. I think 900 for me is an aggressive step down. If you're concerned about the 4,000 square foot person or 5,000 square foot person putting a large unit, and I've heard this before, I think 9 is an aggressive step down. I'd say go to 12, go to 1250, work it down, because right off, I have an aversion to that. And the reason I say that too is, there are older people who have full lives. They don't need the whole house. And yet they want to play bridge, or they want to entertain people, they want people to come to their home, and they have the financial wherewithal to do it. It can be restricted. But you could start there. You could start, adjusting this in, because if there's too much, it's hard to pass too many things. And when I look at this, the average person doesn't understand what that first section says.
No, that would have to be
It's too aggressive.
carefully explained, and it may not fly.
Most of us have non-conforming. And people don't understand, people don't know today whether their daughter's going to, come home with a child divorced, or someone's going to get hurt in their family, or something's going to happen. This is a great bylaw we have. I'm very proud of it. I think it's very progressive, and I think more and more towns will have it. It's a good thing. But your concern is it gets out of control. I can assure you, I own rental properties. My brothers and I, we don't spend that kind of money just to rent it out. You're not going to get your money back. So people are not going to do that. People are going to do this mostly for some kind of personal reason, with the knowledge that in the future, I didn't just waste my money. I have something that someone else could buy from me, or it could be rented out. So I'm not opposed to change, and I'm not opposed to tweaking, but I just want to tell you my comments too, because I'm only representing one of many, that once people start realizing this, they're going to have comments too. So.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think you're right, Joe, about the non-conforming lots. That's probably an aggressive position, because it does take many properties sort of out of the game, probably too many. But can you think of a way to, on the Avs, for example, or even in Minot, which is not quite as extreme a situation, make sure that, every other home doesn't have 5 or 6 cars associated with it?
We have that problem now anyway. Like I have a neighbor down next to one of our properties at Minot.
Why would you want to exacerbate it then?
Well, no, I mean, he has all sorts of stuff out there, and he's not with the program, and this is just part of life. But I don't want to exacerbate it, but I'll say like Garden 2 years ago, Garden was never built. The fears that people had, this becoming just a rental, they never built it.
Well, I understand, but we can't sit here and make decisions and pass bylaws because...
No, I understand.
Because of that.
I would say the things that I see you struggle with here is scale, subordinate. I mean, I clearly understand that idea, but I see it being bantered back and forth. That's really hard. I think if you focus in on that, if I were to articulate things that I understand, like a bond, it'd be a terrible thing to restrict a bond, a pre-existing bond, from becoming a nice accessory dwelling, you know, inadvertently. Might be meant to, but you have to watch out for that sort of thing. But it's clear, you have a house and you have a barn and it's subordinate. But I think that's where you need to spend a lot of time, and it's not easy to find it. There are some other things, but I think that concept, subordinate, as opposed to another house. You know, some people can afford to have another house. Accessory dwelling, Charlie Field's old home, which once was Mr. McNamara's, on Glades Road, on for $4 million. It's in an R3 zone. It's the most expensive house in town. It has an accessory dwelling. E.V. Sullivan's house sold for $3 million. Oh, excuse me, $4 million. It had an accessory dwelling. So that's in an R3 zone. So there's no simple way to say it. You can't restrict an R3 and make it bigger than an R1, but your problem you're having is scale. You know, it's an anomaly for someone to come in and have the kind of money to throw up a very big place anyway. You're not going to have a lot of Morelands. If we look at it, we don't want to punish a person who is an average working person or, you know, has a family situation.
Well, I also, it's not just scale that we're dealing with. As you heard in the audience today, we're dealing with the concern of individuals about, if taken to the nth degree, what does that do to my neighborhood? It makes every lot a two-family lot in a place where they expected to have single-family homes.
But what we know from history is we've had this since about 1990 or 1992. And over that time period, I think we were allowed 20 or 25. On average, it was about 2 or 3. In a year's time period, we're getting more now.
It's getting a lot more now.
Yeah, it's really ramping up.
It's ramping up.
The demographics of our population are changing. You know, people are living longer. The elderly people are living longer. So these sort of situations, this is the direction. This is what
That's really what we're talking about. We're talking, if we talk Hathaway Road, we talk Moreland, we talk this one, they're really not family situations.
Yeah. Well,
I
is
mean,
it
I
more than a
understand the
family?
demographics are changing, but the ones that we're seeing are really not necessarily for family members.
I was actually thinking about the 900 might be a little restrictive, you know, maybe 1,000, I don't know.
Laura, you did the research. What do other towns have for limits?
I think the 900 was pretty common.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
When I read
That's in
over
the
your-
model bylaw, too.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I think 900 is bigger than it is in Norwell, right? And it's bigger than Cohasset.
Yeah, I mean, I think just that the second paragraph of 530.2, if we did that, just that in itself would be a huge benefit. Because I think the issue of scale or size has been a huge thorn.
Yeah, but I think there are two things, well, three. One is scale, which is visual. One is congestion and density of people. You know, people buy into a town like Scituate, into a single-family neighborhood with space around their homes. For one of the reasons is to not have the hustle and bustle and traffic and noise and congestion, if you will, of a more urban setting. And I think one of the fears, some of the fears that we've heard are the fact that's going to be at risk. You know, and especially in the areas where the homes are so close together already.
Mm-hmm.
So it is visual scale, but it's also this sort of more subtle scale of activity, if you will.
So let's just
It's
say
additional pressure on infrastructure, too,
But
if it's town sewer or something like that.
Absolutely.
You know?
But let's use your example on Arbor Way. Now, are all of those homes, are they conforming or not? None of them are conforming, you think? Average?
As far as the lots,
Yeah.
well, that lot was conforming,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I guess
think-
my point is, let's just use that as what you were saying.
Right.
Let's just throw out Arbor Way, and everything is in this, we submit it, and it gets approved. I mean, literally every single house on Arbor Way could still build an accessory dwelling. So what you're proposing doesn't really solve that per se.
I'm not trying to solve it necessarily. I'm trying to mitigate it and confine it to some reasonable...
Trying to push it from one area and put it into our...
I wouldn't even mind saying I think that's perhaps
Well,
right.
I
that
guess-
pre-existing non-conforming is probably not the right thing to do, because it does affect so many different properties, including my own, for various reasons, not just the fact that it's a 5,000 square foot lot on the Avs, but, your setbacks, there's a million different things.
Well,
So let's forget about that for a moment and say, what would happen if you said that you couldn't put a new accessory dwelling within or external to a primary dwelling on a lot under 10,000 square feet?
Well, what I was going to propose potentially is, some distance. I don't know whether it's a mile, 500 feet or something. There can be no more than 3 accessory dwellings within 500 feet or 1,000 feet or whatever that distance is. So that, as an example, let's say Arbor Way might be able to have 3 as a maximum or something. I don't know how we can condition
And how do you
that.
decide who gets them and who doesn't?
First come, first serve.
That's going to be tricky.
Okay.
We have a lottery.
I think you're gonna get 2 people there, and the third guy's you're gonna force the third person in so he doesn't lose whatever opportunities.
All right, so it's a bad suggestion. I was just trying to think of another way.
Yeah,
To-
I hear you.
to,
Yeah, but it's a real concern.
Yeah,
I mean,
to get the results you're looking for, but not have it be restricted on the pre-existing non-conforming thing.
And Joe's correct. This doesn't happen very often, and it hasn't, although we see it ramping up. And you've got the thought that it should only be allowed sort of periodically in terms of geography of a neighborhood. But the fact is, the fear that people have, if that's the right word, the concern, is that they have no control over the process. As an abutter to somebody who might put an accessory dwelling in or on their property at some point, as long as that person meets the bylaw requirements, it's going to happen whether I want it to or not. And that's kind of that's
well,
not
it's
a
the
good
same
thing to
thing with
feel.
an empty lot next to you,
It
right?
is,
Somebody
it
can build a
is.
house on it as
It
a
is.
right, so.
Right. But
But
when
they
you,
could do an addition, without the kitchen,
Yep.
and you have the same situation.
yep, absolutely. I know.
Let me suggest that we kind of table this for a while,
Yeah, you do well thinking about it.
think about where we are. I just as soon get out of here at 10:30.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
overall, though, I like the direction. I think it's really good.
Yeah, it
But I
may
think-
not
I think
be
it addresses-
achievable, but
It addresses the 2 things I have. One is, let's come back and put some definitions of subordinate. But I think we also need to address the size. I think 900 square feet is pretty good. You can, it seemed to me I have a napkin that tells me I can design a whole house at 8 square feet.
You know
do.
the average square foot?
And it even had
space
3
per
bedrooms.
person On a new house?
On a new house?
Yeah,
I don't know.
1,000 per person. Not that I'm suggesting that. So average home now, today, new home, is about between 28 and 3,000. So 900 is not gigantic, I'd be more prone to not oppose you if you said 1,200. I could understand that. And then if you found that's aggressive, deal with it later. But right off, 900, it's not big.
But the
Yeah, this was
idea,
up- this
the
came up
idea
years
is not
ago.
to build a second home
No, I
or a
understand.
second,
But this came up,
Right.
that came up with the selectmen, and the selectmen opposed it 900 in that very meeting.
I would not,
Which meeting was that?
2 years ago, when it went to the selectmen, they voted 4-1. They felt that 900 was too tight.
Too restrictive.
And so, I'm just saying that, I want to participate. I'd like to see your adjustments. The idea of 25, you're going in the right direction to kind of control the design or the style. Where you have your roof line, 25. That's more your direction of getting some control.
Oh. That's
I think what
helpful.
What I'd like to see addressed is that if there's an accessory dwelling created, it's not for a family. If you've got more than 2 bedrooms, if you've got 1,200 or 1,400 square feet, home potentially could be very attractive to a family, and I don't think that's
Well,
what
no, I'm not saying
that's what the idea
14, I'm
is.
saying like go 12,
Right.
and I can see that. And then if you find a couple of years from now that's not doing it, just then. But you've got a lot of changes you're looking to do, and the ones that I think you've been having trouble with are big structures. That's at least I've watched the Moreland situation.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Well, we've had two.
Well, but you heard
That's-
tonight that there's
We had
other
this kind of
concerns.
conversation many times,
I know you
too.
have.
And Hatfield, too,
Yeah.
was
But this
also.
is true about anything, new subdivision, you'll get a dozen people. And unfortunately, you guys get beat up all the time with people because, they come here and it's in their backyard. But if we're talking about cell towers, you have this. If we're talking about new subdivision, you have this. We always have people come. People don't recognize you guys volunteering, spending your time here, they come up here and but you hear the negative side. But they live there with tenants there. They lived there, never had a problem. They didn't complain about the tenant living in there at that time. So, and they left here. I think they were happy with the adjustments that you made. So,
Would submit that they're not.
I would say not happy, but I think
yeah,
at
not
least
happy.
somewhat.
The other thing is, I could have
Not
10 cars in my
cross-burn happy.
driveway. It's hard to control.
Or angry.
Of course, you could have a single-family home and have a load of cars.
I mean,
But you can think of circumstances that would make that more likely and other circumstances that would make it less likely.
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea of like down the ass where you're saying a 5,000 square foot lot, you have to say, and I don't know the legality of this, but maybe you have to say it has to be a lot that has 10,000 square feet or more.
Mhm.
But I don't know if that's legal. I don't know.
I wanted to just hand out a memo that Karen put together with some tentative dates for town meeting. So this is for the spring town meeting. This is just to show everyone
Everything should have been done
really
yesterday.
We're late?
how we're not late, but we're like
We don't
right
have
on
much time.
Oh, 9/11 to 12/11, though.
So anyway.
Do you know if anybody, they're gonna have any other articles that they're gonna provide for us to hold hearings and that stuff?
For the spring town meeting. We were told about an article for eliminating the upload requirement on lots,
Mhm.
that somebody feels like this is, a great thing to do, so they're bringing some article forward to do that.
Eliminating the upland requirement?
Yeah, you know how, right now, when you create a new lot, it has to be, say, 40,000 square feet of upland.
Mhm.
This would just be 40,000 square feet of anything. So it would be kind of radical, speaking of radical.
Well, but anything you built on it would still have to conform to the setbacks from any wetlands and also conform to the dimensional requirements of the zoning bylaws.
Yeah, but when you think about people buying and selling lots, if you had a lot that was, say, 80% wetland, you could legitimately sell it, and then someone else would buy it, and
If they were dumb enough.
they would wind up with,
Yeah.
a tough situation. So we make it that one, there's a couple of others we put it out. There's probably gonna be, there's gonna be a change which the selectmen may adopt to require that with any irrigation system, you have to do it on a private well, you can't tie it into tap water. But that's something that they can do as water commissioners, so that will probably be not something that goes to town meeting.
Sounds like a good idea.
And then maybe. yeah,
So they're saying no new irrigation systems?
No new irrigation systems on town water.
But all the existing ones are okay?
Existing
You
ones,
couldn't
they
really
can't
change,
make them
yeah.
now. They might like to.
Interesting.
So that's basically what we know right now.
What we need to do before we wrap it up? Minutes?
Minutes and accounting?
County?
So we're going to talk about the design review.
Yeah, you want to talk about design review, just
Yeah.
do you want to agree?
Yeah, I think, let me see if I can set it up. We've got one opening on design review, and we've got two applicants. I think you've got in your packet, both of the applicants. What I'd like to do is to set up a time where we can interview those, look to fill that vacancy. At this point in time, we've not had anybody apply for the alternate member applicants. I think Bob, if he applied, he would have go back. We would have let him. But maybe what we could do is put that and re-advertise that.
Re-advertise it, sure.
We can do that.
Remember before, I actually wrote a letter to the Mariner. Did you want something like that?
We could do that.
I think it'd be great. Maybe Bob wants to write something about being an alternate?
How exciting it is, and
How fulfilling?
Yeah, how satisfying.
He looks excited already.
I mean, it was definitely how it all came about. Definitely a surprise introduction to how the town works and what's involved. So,
He did have such a unique, entrance.
yeah, I got volunteered.
That's good.
Well, if you do not want to, how about this? I'll put my neck out and say that I could do that. But if you want to, absolutely, please do.
Why don't we start that way, and I'll kind of see what I can put together, cobble together as something, and maybe bounce it off you or something like that. But yeah, no, it's interesting.
Did you, by the way, did you see what I had written before? I could probably send it to you, and you just change a few words now.
I don't remember specifically, no, seeing it, but.
It was basically like, this was an introduction to how
No, and that would be great.
the
I'd
town
love-
works, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, you should be excited about it, that kind of thing. Obviously, it didn't work that well.
Well, like I said, I kind of got blindsided by the, hey, you got 9 votes, guess what? You're the planning board alternate. I'm the what?
Maybe you could even throw something in there about this opening and kind of tie that into what you write, that there's now an opening and...
Yeah.
I think we got it in good hands. We got-
All right.
Yeah, I'll correspond with
you.
Yeah. Moving on.
Let's pay bills.
Oh, bills. All right. I move that we pay $1,829.26 to Beals and Thomas for the construction observation for the drainage basin at Deer Common, and $345.00 for Chesia Consulting for construction observation services for the Glen in August 2015.
2014.
It says 2015, but it must be an error.
Must be...
And
Date
for
to check
yeah, as I say,
appropriately.
the future,
Yeah.
$57.50 to Chesia Consulting for engineering peer review for 50 Country Way, and also, I guess it's the. Why is there two 50?
It's just that.
Oh, okay.
That's it. It's just...
Oh, because one is 0. Okay.
Numbers come up twice.
So
sometimes.
for the engineering peer review for 50 Country Way.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sign those.
Great.
Do we have minutes? No?
Do you have anything from the town planner before we adjourn?
Nothing that can't wait.
I noticed
What I might do is send out like a little update, like maybe Monday,
Okay,
on
that'd be
a
good.
bunch of different little things.
I noticed in the real estate section that Heatherly Road sold.
Yeah. Yeah, for a nice price.
I have
What
something
it was.
that is
I think it
not.
was $1.8 million,
Yeah, that's somewhere right there.
$1.6 million, something like
I
that.
thought it was $1.6 million.
Maybe it was $1.6 million.
A little planning document, which you're proud of.
Oh, good, yeah.
No, anyway,
So did it sell with the accessory dwelling permit tagging along with it?
Sure, I would think so. I mean, he just got it. Although the appeal period wasn't up yet, I believe. Isn't that right?
Right.
Yeah.
The appeal period can be ending very, very shortly.
Okay, but if I'm the buyer, I have the right to construct that accessory dwelling, right?
Yeah, unless somebody appeals it, which I doubt they
Okay.
will.
And
Right.
has to get recorded.
And it's got record,
Yeah.
you presume it'll get recorded.
Yeah, and you have to take out that room.
Yeah, right, well.
You have to build it so it doesn't exist.
Right.
You just board it
Whole
up.
accessory dwelling or just the room?
I mean, that should be easy to build. You just put in a window and board it up.
Board up the windows, right.
Okay, so
Just a reminder, I won't be here at the next meeting.
you will
Right?
not, right?
I will not, right?
We
Well,
have
and-
Bob's motion.
Well, wait, I said real quickly, I just wanted to make everyone aware. I picked this up at one of the restaurants in town, I won't say which one, but actually there is a super awesome section about Scituate. It has like a lot of the local businesses.
Okay.
And it's more the EDC, obviously, purvey, but I just thought it'd be, if you guys were interested in it, it was really nice.
I'd love to see it. Where did you get it?
I picked it up at Oro.
Okay.
There's actually a whole little thing on Oro. I'm assuming they must have paid.
Would I have to go to Oro to get one, or are they around somewhere else?
You may have this,
Yeah.
you may have that one.
Richard's
I'll
gonna
sell
take
this
it.
one to you, Bob.
Yeah.
But there's,
Richard's taking you to
I don't
lunch
think
so
I
you
can
can get
afford
one.
it.
there's a whole section on the South Shore. Anyway, I just thought it was
awesome.
really nice to see businesses showcased and the region
Yep.
and the town specifically showcased in such a way.
I have some interesting news that dovetails with this a little bit. They're going to be shooting a movie in the harbor,
Yeah.
or
I
at
heard
most
that.
of one, called New Kids.
Is that what it's called? New
Yeah,
Kids?
New
Who's in
Kids.
it? Do you know?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
Oh, and I was at the coffee place, which isn't open, or I don't think it's officially open. This was like 2 weeks ago, but it looks really nice. I'm very excited about it. That's the
The Lucky
Where did
Fin?
that-
yeah, the Lucky, it's gonna be called the
Lucky
Lucky
Fin.
Fin Cafe. I think
Huh?
you guys looked at it while I wasn't here on planning boards.
Yeah, we did.
It was really nice, so.
Yeah, Lucky Fin.
Anyway, that's it.
Excellent.
Okay, now you can have your motion.
Bob's got a motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.